busy summer night for Colorado Springs.
Dispatch to Medic 5.
Medic 5, go ahead.
31 traffic.
The typical shift at that time was 24 hours. You worked 8 in the morning to 8 the following morning. You could run anywhere from actually 15 to 20 calls.
We have a victim that's unresponsive. PD is already on scene.
Medic 5 responding.
Go. Code 3 at that particular time was urgent. You go as fast as possible, but as safely as you possibly can.
EMTs Mark McDonald and Mark Bruning are responding to a call at a residence near Palmer Park on the city's east side.
Once we got there, the PD were already on scene, and so our part of our job was to go in and actually assess the patient.
Where's the patient?
He's in the master bedroom.
All right.
It's kind of surreal, to tell you the truth, because you're thrown immediately into this chaotic scene.
Up here, up here.
Get the heart rate monitor on.
You guys, please. Everything's gonna be okay.
But it was pretty well obvious at that time that this gentleman was deceased.
Nothing.
Several miles away, Sergeant Joe Kenda is already waist deep in an unrelated investigation.
Did the suspect make a statement?
No, not yet. He had a bloody knife on him. I think it's a murder weapon.
It's after 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm at the scene of a homicide. Crime never sleeps, crime never takes a day off, and everybody seems to like the cover of darkness.
The corner's on his way. Okay.
Dispatch to 411.
Go for 451.
We have a report of a shooting near Palmer Park. First responders are saying they believe it's self-inflicted.
The initial report was this is probably a suicide, and I decided to remain at my current crime scene and send one of my detectives and report back to me.
Within the hour, detectives to the residence near Palmer Park.
Good evening, Detective.
Hey, what do we got here?
39-year-old male, single gunshot wound to the head. Appears to be self-inflicted.
They had identified him as an individual named Charlie Tuttle, who actually worked for the city of Colorado Springs in the electric division.
Before I met Charlie, he was a staff sergeant in the Air Force, and he worked in electronics, repairing and calibrating flight simulators. He was always perceived as a very honest and trustworthy person.
Looks like the wife, stepdaughter, and a neighbor discovered him in the bedroom. We cut the neighbors loose. He didn't know anything.
Okay. And where's the body?
Upstairs in the bedroom.
Lead the way.
In the master bedroom, Mr. Tuttle is laying face down on the bed.
The family found him like this?
Yes, sir.
On initial examination of the scene, detectives noted that, in fact, the victim still had a .22 caliber in his hand.
It looks like somebody kicked the door in.
It's apparent that there was forced entry into the room, wherein this person was discovered.
This is the only entry into the room.
There's a shoe print on the door next to the door handle assembly.
Witnesses claim that they broke the door in after they heard a gunshot.
We have an individual who was depressed and actually locked himself in the bedroom, climbed in the bed, and shot himself. That's a pretty good possibility at this point.
To confirm that possibility, investigators need to see if witnesses' stories lead to the same conclusion.
Well, let's go talk to the family. If he killed himself, maybe they can tell us why.
They then speak to the wife of the victim, whose name is Jackie Tuttle. She's 42 years of age.
Mrs. Tuttle, I'm so sorry for your loss. Do you mind answering a few questions?
Jackie is kind of quiet, soft-spoken. She worked for a real estate company, and she had been married to Charles for about 14 years. He was actually her second husband.
Do you and Charlie have any kids together?
No. I have 2 grandchildren from my first marriage. My older daughter, Jennifer, she lives back in Texas with her father. And Sarah, she lives here with us, and she was here tonight.
So how was class today?
Okay. My partner called out sick, though.
Jackie says, well, it was a nice Friday evening for the family. She had planned a really nice dinner.
Well, this looks great.
Hope you like it.
She had prepared some shrimp cocktail, which is a favorite of her husband's.
Oh, babe. You give me another?
This is good.
You're done.
No, I don't think so. I'll be fine.
She says the evening progressed in a normal manner, except for the fact that Charlie was drinking heavily during dinner.
Now, how much alcohol did Charlie consume?
I don't know, like 10 beers and some whiskey.
Jackie reports to the officers that her husband seemed to be very distressed after dinner and continued to drink and said he was going to bed.
So around midnight, Sarah and I went down and put a movie in downstairs. That's when we heard the gunshot. I'm sorry. I can't breathe. I can't.
It's okay. Thank you.
And that's when she became so distressed and she could not continue conversing with the officers because of her emotional state.
Hoping to learn why Charlie was distressed, investigators turned to Jackie's daughter, 19-year-old Sarah Reynolds.
Excuse me, Sarah. Do you have a moment to answer a few questions?
They ask her to describe the events of the evening, separate from her mother, and she tells precisely the same story.
You live here with your mom and Charlie?
Yeah.
She indicated that she recently moved into her mother's house and was attending the Colorado Beauty College.
Mom thought it would be a good idea to live here to save money, which helps. So after dinner, Charlie went to bed. And Mom and I watched a movie in the living room.
And it was about 1:30 when she heard a loud bang.
What was that?
Charlie!
We went upstairs, but his door was locked. We tried to force the door to open, but it wouldn't budge.
And her mother said, go get the neighbor, he can help us. And she did that.
The neighbor came over and kicked the door in, and that's when we found him on the bed.
I know this is difficult, Sarah, but can you think of any reason that Charlie may have wanted to end his life?
Yeah. He was just so different since the accident.
About a year earlier, he'd been in a very serious car accident.
Come here, honey. Come here, let me help you. Please, here, let's get this out of the way.
He was struck from behind by another car. It injured Charlie's neck and caused him pain in his neck and upper back.
His personality changed after that. He was so down about everything. Constantly called out of work.
He became more depressed. He drank more. Now, all of that put together certainly sounds like someone who may be willing to end their days.
After dinner, he was complaining that his neck hurt. Maybe he just had enough of the pain, you know?
Yeah. Once again, I'm truly sorry for your loss.
Hours later, Sergeant Kenda requests a status report on Charlie Tuttle's case.
We found it odd that he shot himself in the back of the head, but all of the evidence that we found at the scene is consistent with suicide.
So what's the coroner think? Oh, here's the report.
By law, the coroner determines the method of death and the manner.
Okay, thank you.
The coroner's office is fully informed of the details about Charlie's recent history and his motor vehicle accident and his depression, and the coroner rules it as a suicide, and the matter is closed, or so everyone thought.
6 months later, an unexpected visitor shows up at CSPD.
Sarah Reynolds? All right, have a seat. Someone will be with you in just a moment.
Thank you.
When someone comes into police headquarters and asks to speak to someone in homicide, they are directed to a supervisor, which in that case was me.
Hi, I'm Sergeant Kenda. Is there something I can help you with?
She had a pretty forlorn look on her face and was somewhat quiet.
The body language suggests that maybe she just wants to leave and is sorry she came in here.
It's all right. Anything you need to tell us will be okay.
Well, my stepfather, Charlie Tuttle, he died 6 months ago in our house.
Okay.
And she looked at me and she said, well, I told a story to the policeman about how my stepdad killed himself.
But I was lying.
Oh my. Well, this is getting interesting. A 39-year-old man named Charlie Tuttle is believed to have shot himself in the privacy of his locked bedroom. Now it's 6 months later, and a young lady has come forward to say she lied, that none of what she said to the police was true.
Okay, why don't you just start from the beginning?
So, the night he died, I helped my mom make dinner.
Hey, honey, can you buy me the parsley?
What's all this?
Something special for Charlie.
Jackie had actually picked up a bottle of Crown Royal whiskey, some cigars, and a fishing magazine.
Wow, Mom.
Right?
And Sarah thought that was kind of unusual because Jackie and Charlie had been arguing quite a bit lately.
And she suspected the marriage was coming to an end.
I thought it was her way of showing him she still loved him and wanted to make things work. And then when Charlie came home, he was in such a good mood.
Oh, wow. It's not my birthday.
No?
Oh, are you making your famous meatballs?
She said he was quite surprised and happy to see them fixing a nice meal for dinner.
And when we sat down to dinner, Mom and Charlie were reminiscing about old times.
This looks great. Wow. Yeah, does the sauce taste funny to you?
No, I think it's fine.
I think the horseradish went bad. Yeesh.
He didn't care for the shrimp cocktail, but he certainly ate everything else and drank his beer as he normally did.
Could you pass me that garlic bread, please?
We had a really nice evening. And then Mom wanted to watch a movie. But Charlie said he's going to bed to read his fishing mag.
Do you remember what time that was?
No, I just remember the movie started and I must have totally passed out.
And that struck me. I passed out? Why did you pass out? Were you drinking?
No, I just remember feeling so tired all of a sudden. I couldn't keep my eyes open. And then I woke up around 1:30.
The house was quiet. The movie was on pause.
Her mother, Jackie, wasn't there, and so she's sitting there on the couch, and she heard this loud boom from upstairs.
Her mother is holding a green bath towel, and protruding from the bath towel is a gun.
Honey, I need you to stay calm, okay?
But what did you do?
Honey, I did it for his own good.
According to Sarah, she said that Charlie's been in a lot of pain, and if anybody asked you, he did it to himself.
Now, I need you to take this towel and put it in the basement. Take it.
And she puts the gun on the bed next to Charlie's hand, and then walks out and locks the door behind him and says, now go get the neighbor to force the door open. So I listened to Sarah's story, and I said, well, Sarah, I must ask you the obvious question.
All right, but this was 6 months ago. Why did you just bring it to us now?
Because I was scared. My mom threatened to kill me if I said anything.
But she told him that I'm coming in to tell the truth because I have so much guilt.
That lock was brand new.
Sarah says that her mother had installed a lock on the bedroom door 2 days earlier, and she asked Charlie to install it for her.
I overheard her tell Charlie it was to keep me out of that room.
Why was that?
She told him it was to stop me from stealing from them. But I think she was planning to kill him the whole time. I can't sleep. I have nightmares about it.
Do you have any idea why your mother wanted to kill Charlie?
Yeah, she's greedy.
She said he had a $49,000 insurance policy, and she wanted that money.
And she got it too.
Perhaps in her mother's mind, she had 49,000 reasons to kill Charlie.
So, you're going to reopen his case?
We're definitely going to look into it and keep in touch. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
You must take people seriously when they tell you the story. Do you trust what they say? Of course not. Let's explore your story. So my first step is to go to the coroner's office. I inform the coroner of the new development, and the coroner agrees to review the report.
So I looked over all the reports again. This is extremely unusual.
Indeed. So what do you think?
Well, I did notice one thing. The witnesses claimed that Mr. Tuttle had been drinking heavily, but that's not what we're seeing in his toxicology results.
The blood alcohol content of Charlie was 0.01. That is not even legally impaired, let alone drunk.
That is strange. Well, after looking through everything, are you still confident it's a suicide?
You know, there's nothing in the report that contradicts suicide, but it is odd that he shot himself in the back of the head.
Yeah, it's very uncommon.
And I vaguely remember there was something else I found fishy, but that was like 40 autopsies ago. I don't remember now. I'll read through my notes again and see if I can figure out what it is.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Doc.
With the coroner's report inconclusive, Kenda's gut tells him to keep digging.
Mr. Wade, I'm Sergeant Kenda. Thanks for meeting me.
Glad to help however I can.
So Joe took an unusual step, and that was to contact the funeral director who embalmed the body of Charlie.
He said, well, in my experience, I've seen over 100 gunshot wounds to the head from people who killed themselves.
There was something that just wasn't quite right about this one. I actually remember it quite well.
If you put a gun to your head, it is extremely difficult to get a 90-degree contact. You're up, you're down, you're this way, that way, left and right. The result is the entrance wound itself is not round. It's shaped differently.
And when I looked at the hole on the inside of the skull, it was much larger, but still symmetrical. Most of the time, you don't get a perfect 90-degree angle.
He said at that point in time, I was suspicious that this was in fact not a suicide, but he went on with the embalming anyway.
There's not much that surprises me in this business, but this one did.
Well, thank you. You've been very helpful.
So this evidence is adding up nicely to murder and not suicide. And with that, we decided to reopen the case.
Kenda and his team start by tracking down Charlie Tuttle's widow at her new home.
So we want to go see Jackie now because I've got a lot more information other than just Sarah's allegations. I know the physical evidence says that Charlie didn't shoot himself.
Do you guys take anything in your coffee?
I'm just black, thank you.
I wouldn't mind some sugar if that's okay.
Sure.
The first thing we noticed is very sparse. Very little furniture, very neat, very clean.
Where are all the family photos?
There are no pictures of her husband, almost sterile, if you will. You might think, well, is this person trying to forget what might have happened?
It is very odd to have a personal home It contains no evidence of memorabilia of your family. So there's something already quite odd about Jackie.
So, what do you guys want to talk about?
Well, your daughter Sarah stopped me at the precinct.
She did? Why?
We tell her, your daughter came to report that you killed your husband and swore her to secrecy.
She's lying. It's an absolute lie.
Now, Mrs. Tuttle, why would your daughter make up a story like that?
It's obvious. She wants more money.
And we looked at her and we said, excuse me, what do you mean by more money? So we're investigating this suicide of Charlie Tuttle, which has now become a homicide based on the physical evidence and based on the fact that the daughter accuses the mother of having committed this murder.
And Jackie tells Joe, oh, she's lying. She only wants more money. Well, more money, what does that mean?
I guess the trouble started with Sarah when Charlie passed away.
She said there was a life insurance policy that was worth $49,000. I received the $49,000. I felt guilty about having all that money. And Sarah, who was a starving beauty college student, had no money.
I gave her 10 grand to finish school. I wanted to help her. I wanted her to get on her own 2 feet for once.
Sarah was the kind of kid where she never really had to go out and earn a living.
You know, I guess my daughter's a bit of a sponge.
What do you mean?
Well, she would take money and live off of it from the guys that she was dating. And then after that, she came and lived with us. And that's when she got Charlie wrapped around her little finger.
Really? How so?
She reports that a year ago, she broke up with a boyfriend in Texas and was so distressed, she called her mother, Jackie, and said, can I please come and live with you?
And when she moved in, Charlie would always give her money for different things that she needed.
Charles was the kind of guy that whatever Sarah wanted, he'd get for her, even bought her a new car.
Now he's gone, and here we are.
So what's all this have to do with Sarah saying you killed your husband?
Like I said, she wanted more of Charlie's insurance money.
Jackie tells Joe that she burns through that $10,000 just in a few months, and she's already back asking for more with her hand out.
So she was threatening you for the money?
No, she wasn't threatening. She was just asking weird questions about the insurance policy.
Like what?
She said, Sarah's been talking a lot about the insurance and who the beneficiary actually was. And Jackie felt that that was somewhat suspicious.
She says, I'm sure that Sarah believes if I get arrested for this and I go to prison, she'll wind up with the rest of the money.
While Kenda knows that life insurance payouts don't work that way, it's entirely possible that Sarah doesn't.
Thank you for talking to us, and thanks for the coffee.
Sure. You know, I hope this gets sorted out quickly, and I'm really sorry my daughter dragged you into this.
We'll let ourselves out.
We decide we're leaving. We have no intention of arresting Jackie at this point.
Well, that was interesting.
It sure was.
And all the way back to the car looking at each other, like, how did we get involved in this?
When we get time, can you look into Tuttle's insurance policy?
Yeah, we'll do.
In the meantime, I want to find out more about Jackie and Sarah.
Good idea. I mean, even if Sarah's as greedy as Jackie says, we should really do that to her mom.
Right.
It's incredible that you find a family like this in a situation like this 6 months after the event. So how do you decide that the daughter is so vindictive and so evil that she will try to put her mother in prison over something her mother didn't do? How does that work? Well, I don't know, because I'm not crazy.
Hoping to learn more about Jackie and Sarah's relationship, Kenda's team tracks down someone close to the family.
We discover a mutual friend whose name is Barbara Levitt.
I'm Detective Kenda.
What can I do for you, Detective?
So you're friends with Jackie Tuttle?
Yeah, I know Jackie. I've known her since 11th grade. Back when we lived in Texas. Almost 25 years. I didn't think I was that old.
I'm sure flies, don't it?
Now, do you know her daughters?
Oh yeah, I've known Jennifer and Sarah since they were born.
So we have not just a friend, but a really good friend who should have some insight into these people.
So what can you tell us about Jackie and Charlie's relationship?
Jackie met Charlie in Texas. She was still married to Edward.
She was living in a very contentious relationship with her husband. Wanted out of that. and she felt Charlie would be her way out.
So Jackie divorced Edward and married Charlie.
According to Barbara, Jackie followed her new husband all the way to Colorado Springs. According to Barbara, Jackie fell head over heels in love with Charlie, and on his end, the feeling was mutual.
So what happened with the girls? Sarah and Jennifer, right?
Those poor girls. They ended up going and staying with their dad. I mean, Sarah took it the hardest. She was only 3 or 4. She just didn't understand.
Barbara indicated that Sarah has resented her mother her entire life.
You know, here's somebody that's supposed to love you more than anything, and here she is not only leaving the family, but moving far away. She's basically abandoning you.
I think that's why Sarah's been a little bit of a troublemaker.
What do you mean?
You know, psychology. Sarah's childhood's warped her mind. She was always around conflict. You know, first her parents, then Jackie and Charlie.
Really? What'd they fight about?
Well, they fought about money. A lot of couples fight about money.
And I don't mean to speak ill of the dead, but...
She said, well, I knew that Charlie was having an affair.
An affair?
Yeah, he had a girlfriend. Jackie was devastated.
So Jackie leaves her husband and her 2 children for the love of her life. And now, the love of her life has a girlfriend. Now that's a motive for murder. So in this investigation of the death of Charlie Tuttle, we've come a long way. And now we learn that there is an affair involved, which really puts the emotions on edge.
They had some pretty bad arguments over this woman. Charlie swore he wasn't cheating on her.
And why did Jackie think he was having an affair?
What? She says that she had found some notes between Charlie and this woman called Betsy. And so Jackie was convinced that he was going to leave her for Betsy.
Is this something that could push somebody over their edge to commit murder? You bet it is.
While Jackie may have had a motive for murder, countering that is the fact that Charlie had a motive for suicide, according to Jackie.
We've got to find somebody else now that may know about that. And we determined that Charlie had a best friend, and we want to know what that friend knows about the affair.
Excuse me, Hugh Hines?
Yes, sir.
I'm Sergeant Kenda. We talked on the phone. Mind if I ask you 2 questions?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Charlie and I worked together for nearly 7 years at the power station. He was an excellent mentor to me.
Can you tell me about Charlie?
He was very generous, very outgoing, real outdoorsman.
His passion was fishing. He really studied the subject, and he was very good at it.
I also heard he was in a bad accident. Was he depressed about that?
No, I don't think so. He's depressed about his marriage.
We were close enough where we shared very personal information, and so I know that Jackie and Charlie were having difficulties in their relationship.
Hey, buddy.
Hey.
How's it going? Nice to see Jackie's gonna let you out of the house for a change.
Jackie.
Yeah.
It's a thorn in my side.
Uh-oh, what's going on?
Well, you know I'm working like a dog, and I work around the clock, and she spends every damn dime I make. And she's spending money I don't even have, bro.
Is it getting that bad?
Yeah. And I'd like to retire someday. I don't want to work till I'm 100 years old. But she's not having it.
Let's go drink some beer and catch some fish.
Sounds good. Would you come fishing with me in Alaska?
She, according to Charlie, went through money like a machine. The way it seemed to work is that Jackie would take Charlie's paycheck, he would turn it over to her, and then it was just gone.
Was Charlie planning on leaving her?
Yeah, he was just trying to figure out how to get his retirement funds out first.
I'm not sure if these were exactly Charlie's words, but the message was that I have had it. I'm just taking my dog, my guns, and I'm going to Alaska.
Alaska?
Mm-hmm.
Was he going with someone?
No, Charlie just wanted to be alone.
We say, well, we hear a story that maybe Charlie was having an affair with some woman named Betsy.
No way, man. He wasn't having an affair with Betsy.
Charlie and Betsy were friends. There was certainly no sexual relationship. Charlie never did anything except work and fish.
He said Betsy was married. She lived in another state, and Charlie would often call her and talk to her. But Jackie knew about her, and was very jealous about her.
Charlie, as a matter of fact, had told Jackie that he was just fed up with her and he was going to move out and divorce her, just because he wanted away from Jackie.
Well, I appreciate the help.
Absolutely.
So what do we do now? Charlie was apparently planning on leaving his wife and taking his money and going to Alaska. Instead, he winds up with a bullet in his head. All signs point to Jackie. What we need now is the proof.
Kenda decides it's time to go back to the very beginning.
I want to talk to the first person who entered that home after the shooting.
Sarge, Eric, Fillmore's here to see you.
Come on, have a seat.
The neighbor who kicked down Charlie's door.
Thanks for coming in.
Sure. What can I help you with?
Can you walk me through what happened the night Charlie Tuttle died?
Okay. Well, I was sleeping and Sarah came over and woke me up. And she said Charlie hurt himself.
I was in a fog of sleep, you know, waking up like, what? Basically, she just wanted me to come over and check it out.
He goes with her over to the house. Jackie's on her knees in the hallway, crying hysterically. He tries the door. It is, in fact, locked.
And then I think she encouraged me, can you break it in? I said, okay.
Charlie? Stay here. Stay back. Stay back.
At that point, I smelled gun smoke. I could visually see a haze in the room.
And then I saw the blood and the gun. I ran downstairs and called 911.
It's burned in my brain, I would say. In my mind's eye, I can glimpse the metal of the gun, his head, and the blood.
I've got some crime scene photos. Would you mind taking a look at them?
Yeah, sure. No, this is not what I saw.
That's not the way I found it. It was different in the photo than how I came upon the scene. I entered the bedroom. You tell that there was somebody in the bed.
Charlie!
But the comforter was pulled all the way up.
Charlie!
Now, if you're going to shoot yourself, would you hide under a blanket to do it? No. But if you kill somebody and you don't want to look at them when they're dead and feel the guilt, you cover them up. Well, my. That's important.
Even with Eric Fillmore's statement, Kenda's case against Jackie Tuttle is weak. As he's pondering how to strengthen it, a possible solution surfaces.
Hey, Sarge, remember when you told me to check into Charlie's insurance policy? You're gonna like this.
He confirmed that Jackie did receive $49,000 from the insurance company, paid her daughter Sarah $10,000, and they have bank deposits into Sarah's account of 10 grand.
Okay, but Jackie hadn't told us that.
Yeah, but you know what's strange is her other daughter, Jennifer, didn't get a penny.
Why would the mother give money to one daughter and not the other?
Were you buying her silence for your $10,000 investment? That's a reasonable conclusion.
We know where Sarah currently lives?
Yeah, I'll get your address.
Thanks.
So we go to find her, and we find that she's living with her grandmother, Debbie.
Thank you.
Can I get you anything else?
No, thank you. So, Sarah, the one thing that's been bothering us is why would your mother give you money from the life insurance and not your sister?
And Sarah was dumbstruck that we knew that. She just looked at us. She had nothing to say. Nothing.
I think it was to keep Sarah's mouth shut.
Grammy?
What do you mean with that?
Debbie went on to say that the day before the shooting took place, she'd gotten a phone call from Jackie.
Hello?
Hey, Mom. Are you busy?
No, I just got home from work. What's going on?
Debbie is a nurse, and her daughter Jackie wanted to know if she combined a sleeping agent called Restoril with alcohol, would that make somebody really sleepy? Would it make them fall very, very soundly asleep?
Oh. Yeah, but you really shouldn't mix those. Why are you asking?
I'm just curious. Actually, Mom, I'm sorry, I gotta go. There's someone at the door.
Okay, I'll talk to you later. It was a very, very odd phone call.
And when she made that comment to me, I'm thinking back to the story about the family dinner.
I just remember feeling so tired all of a sudden. I couldn't keep my eyes open.
That Charlie didn't eat the cocktail sauce because he thought it tasted funny.
Does Does Jackie have access to that drug?
Charlie's doctor prescribed it for him after his car accident to help him fall asleep easier.
Jackie, you thought you were going to walk, but you're not. Because we're going to walk over to your house and take you to jail. After this long, prolonged investigation, all the information we have learned adds up circumstantially to the guilt of Jackie Tuttle. We're going to place her in custody for the death of her husband.
Over the next couple hours, Kenda and his team hit the streets.
They do find Jackie about 11:30 that night in a local watering hole.
What are you guys doing here?
Jackie, I have a warrant for your arrest for the murder of Charles Tuttle.
You can't be serious.
Cuff her. Show the thing.
Sarah is lying. She just wants the money.
And I looked at her and I said, well, Jackie, you have a problem.
Well, she wasn't the only one telling us that.
But I didn't do it.
It's not what the evidence says.
So we're going to take you in front of a jury of your peers and let them decide about your future. Come on, us.
And Jackie got real silent and looked at Joe and said, I want a lawyer. She was then taken into custody, taken into county jail and booked.
Even without a confession, Kenda believes he knows what transpired.
In my opinion, based on what I've learned, I think that Jackie knew her husband was going to leave her.
And so Jackie might be thinking, if Charlie's going to leave me high and dry, how am I going to survive on my part-time salary? And who's going to take care of me in my retirement?
Kenda theorizes that at that point, Jackie hatched a plan to stage her husband's suicide and collect a 5-figure insurance payout.
She had a lock installed in that bedroom door 2 days before the death.
Wow. Looks like you bought out the whole mall.
Pretty much. We always need stuff. You know that. Honey, when you have some time, will you stop us on our door?
Sure, but do we really need this?
I'd feel a lot better knowing that Sarah can't get in there and steal anything.
Okay. I'll do it later. After my beer.
Isn't this cute?
Yeah, that's nice. Do we still have the receipt for it?
She asked her own mother, the nurse, how to devise some sort of drug to make him fall asleep.
But she also needed to drug her daughter so that she wouldn't be able to interfere with her plan.
This looks great. Huh. I think the horseradish went bad.
So she stirred the restaurant in his favorite food, shrimp cocktail. But she didn't realize the drug would leave a weird taste in the sauce. And Charlie didn't eat anything that contained the drug, and that's why his toxicology screens came back negative.
However, Sarah finished her portion, and when she passed out on the couch, Jackie decided it was now or never.
Jackie quietly went up to Charlie's room and grabbed a towel and a handgun. To her dismay, Jackie sees that Charlie has fallen asleep on his stomach and realizes it will be suspicious if he shoots himself in the back of the head.
Jackie knows if she tries to roll him over, he might wake up. Then how is she going to explain this gun in her hand?
and she realizes there is no turning back. And she points the gun at his head. And pulls the trigger.
And then she went to work, staging the bedroom to look like a suicide.
Everything about this crime scene is not a spontaneous thing. She thought about it and carried it out.
Jackie Tuttle is charged with first-degree murder. Her daughter, Sarah Reynolds, is not charged with any crime.
Unfortunately, you never can predict what's going to happen during the trial. And Jackie's mother took a stand and recanted a lot of the information that she had given before.
In the court, you need proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So now the jury is left with making a decision. Who's lying? Everybody's lying when they found Jackie not guilty of first-degree murder. Charlie went to his grave, and nobody paid the price. It's the reality of the court system. You're innocent until you're proven guilty.
In my opinion, I don't believe Charlie killed himself. I think it was a wrong decision on their part. I think she got away with killing Charlie.
It's just interesting how somebody could be involved in something like that and then go on to live just a very normal, carefree life.
Hi. Wow.
Maybe she has had a really happy life and been able to enjoy all that money that she was so desperate to have.
You've often heard it said that time heals all wounds. Time also heals guilt. People's attitudes, memories, and fearfulness have washed away with time.
They said desert nights are empty, but the night she vanished was crowded with signs. Red neon humming over the lone gas station. A payphone scratched to silver by too many desperate coins. 2 crows on the billboard for cheap rooms and cheaper luck. A girl in a faded denim jacket closing the register, counting quarters like tiny moons. All of it is still here when I press play on the memory. Cold case, missing teen, shocked community. It starts with a clock that won't stop and a fluorescent light that takes too long to die. Her name travels like a distant siren through every hallway where the town still whispers. She locks the door. She waves at the highway. She steps into the kind of darkness that doesn't echo. And the desert swallows the sound. That was 1998. The summer of cassette tapes on the dashboard and bug-splattered headlights. The year everything ordinary conspired to look like a warning. Later, the deputy will say the camera at the pump froze at 0112, stuck frame. A grainy still of a tank half full, a hose slacked on hot concrete, a shadow shaped like a question leaning just out of the light. Later, a mother will say she felt the night tip. Plates slid a little on the kitchen table. The dog put its head between its paws. The sink hissed. That's how fear announces itself. Not as thunder, but as a hairline crack across porcelain. At dawn, the store manager finds the keys in the alley. The landfill fence rattles. The ledger is short, exactly $22.75. Nothing like a robbery. Everything like an interruption. A patrol car drifts the back streets as if it can smell a secret. Report filed. Bolo issued. Flyers bloom on telephone poles like paper flowers that never wilt. Mysterious disappearance. Teen missing. Last seen wearing denim jacket with 2 stitched stars on cuff. The kind of detail that keeps entire towns awake. They search in lines, shoulder to shoulder, because that's what you do when fear has a map and you don't. Volunteers drag the shallow ravines. The sheriff's helicopter circles the dry lake, stirring up a ghost of rain that never falls. In the canyon, somebody finds a shoelace, not hers. On the service road, somebody finds a receipt, not hers. In the ditch behind the motel, somebody finds the other kind of silence, the kind that looks like nothing but feels like a closed door you're not allowed to open. Days pass, then weeks, then years that take the shape of a pause. The case cools, then freezes, then sinks into that locked drawer labeled someday. Headlines move on. The town doesn't. A mother keeps the porch light on. A brother learns how to live beside a shadow. A teacher retires but keeps an empty desk in her garage, a shrine to ordinary days that never got their ending. Investigators grow older inside folders that grow heavier. The detective on nights learns to talk to the evidence as if it can hear. Tell me what I'm missing. The evidence says nothing because it is dust and cardboard and a faded denim cuff with 2-stitched stars. But it listens, and that matters. Fast forward. 2 decades blur. The desert changes, but only a little. The town puts up a new stoplight, as if a red circle can slow the past. The gas station is now a coffee place that sells hope in paper cups. The payphone is gone, leaving a square of cleaner wall like a missing tooth. The billboard peels. The crows are still crows. And somewhere, boxed in the evidence room under humming ballast lights, a jacket sleeps. Forensics changes. Swabs change. Databases breed branches like trees. Genealogy becomes a key that fits locks no one believed were locks. The state lab upgrades a machine that can taste a molecule and tell you who breathed near it. The case wakes. Cold case reopened. A headline with the swagger of a promise. The detective who talks to evidence is now a lieutenant. He signs the chain of custody form like a vow. The technician turns the vial in gloved hands, a ritual older than regret. They take the cuff. They lift what 27 summers could not erase. Touch DNA. Skin dandruff, fine as regret. A partial profile whispers numbers. It doesn't shout. It doesn't point. It taps on the lid and waits. The lieutenant sends it out into the digital dark where relatives drift like faint constellations. A second lab, then a third, because truth has to repeat itself before anyone believes it. The matches are not matches, not yet. They are cousins of cousins in a county 3 states over, a family tree with wind damage but roots that hold. Unexpected lead. Strange link. Breakthrough possible. The headlines grow teeth again. The map on the wall grows threads again. The town holds its breath again. It's late when the lieutenant sees it. The shape inside the data that refuses to be coincidence. The tree narrows. A surname familiar as a rumor. A face from the old yearbook beside a receiver caught forever at 0112. A man who worked maintenance at the motel behind the station, 90 days on, then gone. He had a pickup with primer gray scars. He had a habit of switching addresses like shirts. He threw dice in back rooms and borrowed money on Mondays. He drifted west with the summer and east with the snowbirds. In 98, he was 28. Now he is 55 and living in a town that looks like a chapter the desert forgot to read. The knock is quiet. The warrant is a thin blade. He opens the door in a t-shirt that remembers a band long dissolved. He is soft around the jaw in a way that suggests he believed he'd outgrown the past. He doesn't know the air has changed shape. He doesn't know the cuff is awake. He says what they all say first. What's this about? The lieutenant names the girl. Not a case number, not a file. A name that still pushes the porch light on. Something crosses the man's face like a cloud over a road where no one is driving. He blinks in the slow, careful way you can hear. He says he doesn't remember much about 1998. He says he was here, then there. He says he was working nights, then not. He says girls came and went like radio songs. He talks the way a motel vacancy sign talks. Flicker, flicker, nothing. They take his toothbrush, they take his soda can, they take his timeline, which collapses like a flimsy table, legs finally giving out. DNA doesn't blink, it doesn't gamble, it doesn't ask permission to haunt. The profile trims the tree to a single branch. The branch leads to a single door. The cuff sings the same numbers again, louder. Suspect identified. Arrest imminent. Community bracing. Words that circle the town like sirens you can't see. The brother hears before the mother, because that's how news moves now, bright and ruthless on a phone screen. He drives to the porch and turns off the light for the first time in 27 years, not because the waiting is over, but because the waiting has changed. Outside, the desert rehearses a storm it will not commit to. Inside, the old detective, now the lieutenant, stands in the kitchen with a folder and the kind of apology you give to time. He says her name again. He says we have him. He says we are sure. He doesn't say solved, because solved is a word that looks clean under fluorescent lights and looks different in a mother's eyes. The man is booked. The camera clicks. The photo looks like a promise made too late. He is charged with murder, special circumstances, kidnapping. He says nothing in court. The room sounds like paper. The town sits in the pews of silence and tries not to tremble at the nearness of an ending. Cold case. Solved. Shocked community. The 3-part headline writes itself on everybody's ribs, but stories don't turn off when the siren fades. They echo. They argue. They make a life-size shape and step into your living room and refuse to leave. The lieutenant remembers the gas station humming like a tired hymn. He remembers the cuff with 2-stitched stars. He remembers what the technician said, barely louder than the machine. It's there. Outside the courthouse, a dust devil unwinds like a tape cassette dragged from the deck. Reporters speak in fast, clipped pieces. The brother thanks the investigators, then says he dreamed last night of a road unspooling into lavender dawn, and she was walking just ahead, and he couldn't catch up, and he didn't know if that meant forgiveness or weather. He doesn't sleep. Not yet. Not tonight. In the motel behind the old station, a maid finds a room key under the radiator decades too late to matter. In the alley where they found the keys, the coffee place throws out bags of grounds, and the air smells like a hug you forgot to ask for. In a locker at the evidence room, the jacket settles. The stars on the cuff look like they've been awake this whole time. The lieutenant drives past the dry lake. The surface carries only starlight, only the idea of water, which is cruel and also a kind of gift. He pulls over and lets the silence sit in the passenger seat. "We got him," he says to nobody, to everybody, to the girl, to the years that did not bend, to the porch light that burned through whole summers, just to say, "Here." The desert answers with wind that has learned all the names we give to grief. That's the thing about endings. They never arrive alone. They bring a procession, relief with its hat in its hands, rage without a belt, tenderness carrying too much on its back. They never look like the headline. They look like a mother sitting at a table with a folder she cannot open because it is both a door and a wall. They look like a town that remembers how to exhale and then forgets again 5 minutes later. They look like the word solved on the evening news and the word still whispering in your ear as you brush your teeth. Still missing birthdays, still empty chair, still love playing detective in the wreckage, searching for a clue that things can go back. They won't, but they will go on. And somewhere in the long corridor between then and now, the story that was frozen behind glass turns its head, just enough to be seen, just enough to leave a new kind of shadow, shorter maybe, but sharper and true. If you listen, you can hear the neon hum again. You can hear coins slide. You can hear the clock refuse to stop and then, just once, stutter. In that brief hitch, you hear a case become a name again. You hear a community gather its pieces. You hear the desert take a breath it forgot it could take. You hear the door finally unlatch. And through it, not triumph, not closure, but something more difficult and more honest, the sound of a town learning to pronounce the past without breaking, in present tense, in full voice, in the bright, relentless grammar of survival. He doesn't sleep in county. He stares at the acoustic tile and counts the holes because numbers are safer than years. He asks for water, gets it, doesn't drink. The clock eats minutes. Somewhere, a bond hearing is printing itself into the morning. The lieutenant drinks coffee that tastes like the inside of a battery and lays out the old map beside the new one. One is sun-faded highways and penciled circles. The other is a server's clean geometry, ancestry lines braided like the intestines of a question. Two different ways of saying the same thing. Where did you go, and who took you there? Headlines crackle. Cold case. Shocked community. Strange lead. We are back inside the room where everything had once fallen quiet. We are turning the volume up until the walls remember. That's how second acts begin, not with triumph, but with a reintroduction, the camera pulling in, the dust settling into legible words. The motel logbook, stored with mildew and warnings, do not touch without gloves. A page marked July, another marked August. A name written in two different inks, two different hands, the kind of sloppiness that happens when nobody expects to be watched. Maintenance, room checks, ice machine repairs. A note. Complaints of banging from A12. Another. Bird trapped in vent? The past didn't know it was collecting evidence. It thought it was running a business. The lieutenant turns the page and finds a staple rusted to the color of dried blood, which is theater, not proof. But all stories allow themselves one flourish, so we remember we're awake. The lab calls, full profile confirmed. The cuff doesn't just whisper now, it sings on key. The genealogist, polite as rainfall, explains the branch splitting, the second cousins who uploaded their Sunday curiosity to a portal that made it Tuesday justice. We're at 99 point something, she says, and lets the decimal speak for itself. The district attorney nods with the gravity of someone who has counted jurors in his sleep for 20 years. The judge signs the next form with a sigh only he can hear. The defense attorney arrives wearing a suit that looks like it remembers a better client. He keeps his eyes level and his hands still. He says words like chain, contamination, context, because that is the job when the present knocks on the door of 1998 and demands an answer. The mother sits in the front row, hands folded, mouth a straight line, a necklace of small blue stones, one for each year since the porch light first learned endurance. The brother stands behind her like a lighthouse that refuses to believe in dawn. Cameras blink. Reporters deliver sentences that feel like rehearsals for a grief too big to memorize. The court officer calls things to order that have never been orderly. The man does not look at the family. He looks at the table where his future is writing notes with a fine pen. He pleads not guilty. The words are light. They leave no dent in the table. They float to the ceiling and hide in the vents like seasons. Outside, the microphones gather like a herd. How do you feel? The kind of question invented by a world that thinks feelings have grammar. The mother says she is grateful and furious and terrified that the word solved will fail to be what it promised. The lieutenant answers with sentences built from ballast. We followed the science. We respected the chain. We never stopped. Behind him, the sun presses its hand on the glass like a visitor. Back to the room with the map. Back to the evidence that once slept. The cuff is not the only singer now. There's a scrap of carpet from a trunk bagged in '98 because someone thought it might matter and then forgot why. There's a receipt with a print smudged into the corner, useless then, useful now. There's a cigarette butt collected by a night clerk who didn't smoke and had a superstition about other people's habits. People save the strangest things, and that strangeness can make a bridge wide enough for truth to cross. The lieutenant sends the butt. The lab eats the past again and burps out a match. Not a surprise, but confirmation, which is a different species of comfort. The trunk carpet offers fibers that argue geography. A dog handler, retired now but stubborn as ever, comes in with a new dog and the same patience. The dog sniffs a memory into the open air. Scrub tamarisk, old motor oil, a glue that hardens like a made-up mind. A search warrant blooms in the shape of a meadow that is not a meadow. They dig in a patch of desert where the wind thinks it owns the narrative. It doesn't. Shovels bite. A backhoe complains. Men and women in hats wipe their wrists and keep going. The first find is not bone. It is the welded foot of a signpost, cut and carried, then buried with its face hidden. Rooms 39 and 89. The motel never offered that rate. The sign belongs to no business on record. Someone learned to lie in metal. Farther down, a belt. Farther still, a necklace with one blue stone. Then space where others would have been. The mother goes very still when she hears. Her hand drifts to her throat as if it can meet the past halfway and complete the pattern. They do not find a body there, not that day. The desert forgives slower than the law, but the ground gives enough to say, this is where someone tried to end meaning. The lieutenant watches the wind carry the dust east and thinks of a car idling under a sky that couldn't be bothered to care. He thinks of 0112 and frames that froze like stubborn cousins at a reunion. He thinks of a maintenance man with a grin like a scratched record and the small, ordinary evil of turning a key. The public wants a neat arc. The public wants handcuffs, gavel, closure. The public reads headlines faster than lullabies. The story refuses to perform on cue. It wants to show its pages. It wants to speak in marginalia. A woman steps forward from a town 2 hours away. She's older now, but not so old that memory has softened everything. She says she stayed at that motel in '99. And a man offered her a free ice bucket as if generosity could hide a trap. She says she locked the door twice and pushed a chair against it and still woke to the sound of a key thinking it was a secret. She says she moved the chair and called down and pretended she needed extra towels. She saved the notepad on the nightstand because it had a phone number written on it. The phone number belongs to a cousin of our man. The cousin is dead now, but the paper is not. Paper has the endurance of small gods. The towel rack still bears tool marks. Photographs are taken. A carpenter who did repairs there in 2000 remembers a panel that didn't fit because something behind it had been rushed. He remembers eyes he didn't like. He remembers $60 in cash for work that should have cost $100. And the way he accepted because that is what rent makes you do. He draws a rectangle on a blueprint with a pencil that leaves angry strokes. The rectangle is A12. The note in the logbook wakes up, complaints of banging, bird and vent. The defense will call it coincidence, then atmosphere, then rumor. The prosecution will call it a pattern. The jury will call it a night they spend with their eyes open. The lieutenant drives the route from the station to the motel, and from the motel to the gravel road that leads to the knot meadow. He times it. He does it at 1 a.m. He does it again at 1:12. He learns what the radio plays at that hour. He learns that the stoplight is now there but was not then. He learns that a car with a tired transmission sounds like a guilty throat. He takes notes that read like haiku because tired minds need short steps. Door, slump, hose, shadow. He stands by the billboard skeleton and imagines the crows clocking in. He closes his eyes and opens them on a road that has been waiting to confess. Back in evidence, a new test arrives, MVAC. A wand that drinks DNA out of fabric the way thirsty ground drinks night rain. They run it over the jacket's hem. They run it over a towel recovered from A12 in a clean-out that wasn't supposed to keep anything. The machine hums like the neon once did. It yields again. Numbers, always numbers. And yet each number has a throat now. Each number says, he touched this, he lifted this, he tried to erase this, he failed. The DA's voice lowers with responsibility. He files an amended complaint. Special circumstance confirmed. The judge sets a trial date that sounds both soon and 1,000 lifetimes away. In the meantime, quiet battles. The man's former roommate in 1998, found after a memory went off like a car alarm, says there was a denim jacket once in the back of the pickup for weeks, not his, and then there wasn't. He says he remembers a night when the man came home with knuckles that looked like they argued with an answer and lost. He says he didn't ask questions because questions can make you homeless. He says he kept an empty key ring from that truck because he liked the weight. He brings it in. The key ring carries nothing now except the suggestion that it once carried everything. The brother drives to the dry lake because staying indoors makes the air push at his ribs. He stands on the salt and listens to the silence shape her name. He talks out loud because grief gets jealous if you give it only inside words. He apologizes for nights he stayed out late and mornings he forgot to ask if she wanted the last pancake. He tells the lake about the lieutenant, the dog, the blue stone, the sign foot. He tells the lake they got him. He lies down on the ground and promises to pretend sleep when the sun tells him to. In the radio station, a DJ dedicates a song to a girl who would be 45 now. He chooses a song with a chorus that wears resilience like a jacket. He doesn't say her name on air because the family asked for quiet. He says, "For the porch that stayed lit." It's enough. People in cars tap their steering wheels like they are knocking on a locked door and hearing footsteps. The defense files a motion. The motion wants to exclude the genealogy. It wants to quarantine science from story, as if stories aren't how jurors breathe. The hearing becomes a debate about trees. A professor stands and makes chromosomes sound like hymns. The judge listens without blinking. In the end, he writes an order that says, the river can enter the city with levees and rules. It's coming in, not a flood, a current. The man is moved to a different unit. He sees fewer faces. He gets a book about deserts from the library and opens to photographs of places he might have stood in without knowing their names. He traces the braided arroyo with his finger and then closes the book as if he has seen a mirror. He asks for a pencil. He draws a square, then a rectangle. He blacks out the rectangle with hard strokes. He chews the eraser down to nothing. When they come for him, he doesn't ask where. He walks the hall like he's measuring it. He sits, and the lieutenant sits, and the DA sits, and the tape recorder blinks its red dot like a small, patient heart. He has read his rights. He nods. He leans back until the chair complains. He stares at a point just over the lieutenant's shoulder, the way people do when they are rearranging their memories into either a shield or a bridge. He says he didn't mean to, then he says he wasn't there, then he says he was drunk, then he says she wanted a ride, then he says he needs water. The tape hears it all, the tape will never forget. The lieutenant does not raise his voice. He places the cuff on the table inside a clear bag, like a relic. He places the MVAC result beside it. He places the photograph of A12's panel. He places the blue stone in a separate bag that does not belong in this room but needed to pass through, like an angel assigned lousy geography. "Tell me where," he says. A sentence built like a home. The man closes his eyes and sees a road. We all do. It's 2 miles south where the tamarisk lean like eavesdroppers. It's a dirt turn-in that never asked for a name. It's a shallow basin that collects wind. He tells them wrong at first. He lies like someone taking off their shoes one at a time, buying seconds. He says east. They drive east and find only the ghost of a picnic table and a tire flattened into a fossil. They come back. He says west. They drive west. The dog whines. The lieutenant steps out and understands how a landscape can be an accomplice. Then he sees it. A glint that isn't rock, a zipper tongue, a buckle, a piece of a life that did not consent to be a landmark. The camera clicks. The desert takes a breath that makes no sound at all. They mark the ground with flags the color of small sunsets and lay down grids like they are teaching the earth to speak in squares. And slowly it does, not with language, but with patience that cuts into you like a dry wind. The zipper tongue is connected to a leather scrap, and the leather scrap remembers a shoe, and the shoe remembers a step that was not supposed to end here. They sift, brush, photograph, bag, repeat. Time stops pretending to be linear and becomes a spiral that tightens with every centimeter of dust removed. A tech reads off coordinates as if prayer needs decimals. The lieutenant holds still enough to feel the thud of his own pulse argue with the silence. Near the buckle, a bead of blue, not stone, plastic from a bracelet that came in a pack of 10 at the drugstore by the laundromat. It is nothing and it is everything. It says she walked into a night so ordinary it should have been harmless. The man sits in an interview room that has heard all the varieties of not my fault and swallows his sentences whole. He wants to pivot back to a story where she asked for a ride, where he became a rescuer, where the road was a collaboration. He tries on versions of himself like coats he can return. The lieutenant listens without twitching. He places a photo of the buckle between them and watches the man blink as if metal can glare. Then he asks about A12 again, and the man's eyes do the thing eyes do when a door rattles in a house that was supposed to be empty. He says he did repairs. He says he changed locks. He says he was trusted with keys. He doesn't say the only truth that matters yet. In the field, the grid yields a clasp shaped like a question mark and a square of fabric that might be from a jacket whose cuff once stitched stars into survival. The DA drives out and stands a little away, coat off, tie loosened, looking like a man pretending not to be a child at the edge of a pool too cold and too deep. He nods to no one. He breathes like he is counting. They bring in a forensic anthropologist with the calm of someone who talks to time for a living. She kneels, tilts her head, and arranges her instruments like a ritual, because rituals are the scaffolds we build so despair won't collapse on us. She explains soil compaction, root etching, scavenger patterns, the ways a landscape takes custody of what people abandon. None of it is morbid when she says it. All of it is grief translated into work. She finds a fragment that could be phalange or pebble and makes the distinction with the soft authority of quiet expertise. It is bone. It is small. It is an opening in the throat of the world. The mother is called and not called. She is kept informed and gently kept away. That line is a tightrope across years that have already been a tightrope. She holds the phone like a fragile thing and says she understands, and then hangs up and presses the receiver to her chest as if it can learn her heartbeat and carry it back to the dust. The motel's wall gives up secrets and drywall coughs. Behind the rectangle the carpenter outlined, they find insulation that wears a smell like fear with the shape of ammonia. They find a hair trapped in a bead of adhesive, ancient and new, at the same time. They find a length of wire that makes no sense until you remember that people who make traps choose objects that claim innocence. The MVAC sings again over the towel and the wallboard and a piece of carpet tack that wouldn't release what it knew. Numbers arrive, faithful and cold, and the DA gets the thing every case asks for: corroboration that points the same direction from different corners of the room. The defense files another motion because that is the gravity of their orbit, and the judge sets another hearing and pads his ruling with careful, sleepless sentences. He remembers clerking on a case that never found its end and hating the way a file can look like a coffin when the light hits it wrong. He will not let this file be that. Reporters keep their distance and then don't because the story has the kind of heartbeat that microphones can hear. They speak in the vocabulary of impact. Shocked community, long-awaited breakthrough, strange clues. They pan across the coffee place that used to be the station, the porch with the unlit light, the billboard bones, the grid that cuts the desert into squares and then into smaller squares. Interviews bloom and vanish. A classmate remembers a science fair project with a volcano that would not erupt. A boss remembers a perfect till and a humming diligence. A deputy remembers a call at 127 that he thought would be about a domestic and turned out to be about a void. People try to tell the truth and end up telling themselves, which is the same thing in a town where the story has been furniture for decades. In the cell, the man stares at the cinder block and begins to draw with his mind where he cannot with his pencil. He traces routes that felt smart then and look foolish now. He sums distances. He erases stoplights that didn't exist and invents alleys that did. He remembers hands and how they shook after and tells himself it was the night air, not the arithmetic of what he had done. Sometimes he can hear the desert as a kind of hiss, and sometimes the desert is a jury, and sometimes the desert is just wind. He sleeps a little and wakes to his name said wrong by a guard who has no intention of correcting himself. In court, the DA calls a genetics witness who has the gift of translation. She speaks of centimorgans like thread and diagrams like family reunions where you can't remember names but you remember who hugged whom. The jury leans forward. The defense paces. The judge thinks of levies. The lieutenant watches faces bloom into comprehension and wants to both speed the clock and arrest it. At the grid, sun becomes a policy. Hats go on. Brakes are called. Water is poured like absolution. They find 2 more beads, not blue this time, but cloudy like a sky that regrets itself. They find a button with a star scratched into it, probably board art from a slow shift or a signature someone invented just to say I am here. They find a plastic comb tooth carrying a single filament that might be canine, or might be a girl who laughed into a mirror at a joke only she could hear. The anthropologist's hands, steady as scaffolds, set each thing into labeled homes. Chain of custody looks like bureaucracy until it looks like the difference between memory and proof. Far west, a storm practices in a line of cloud. The grid keeps going. The lieutenant returns to the old receipt that was not hers and reads it again with a new kind of hunger. The timestamp doesn't align with anything obvious, which means it aligns with everything subtle. He overlays routes, notes, postings. He notices a pattern that is not a pattern until you push it and it holds. 3 women in 3 months reporting a knock they did not invite and the click of a latch that sounded like a person exhaling. He pulls those files. He finds a witness who moved to Arizona and changed her hair color and her last name. He calls. She answers. Her voice carries the shape of a house with all its windows locked. She comes back and sits with the sketch artist and draws a mouth that smiles without warmth. The mouth could be anyone's and also his. She remembers the ice bucket. She remembers free. She remembers the tone of that word like a bruise that never learned to fade. The man's former roommate returns with more unsteady charity. He says there was a shovel that wasn't his and then was gone. He says a truck bed smelled like something had surrendered inside it. He says there was a joke about birds and vents, and he laughed like rent does when it counts your wallet. He is not a hero and not a villain. He is a witness manufactured by pressure. The DA thanks him for being human in public. The defense cuts at him with small knives made of adjectives. He bleeds credibility and stands anyway. Jurors watch with hands folded and eyes that translate every twitch. Inside their heads, a chant, "Don't be fooled, don't be fooled, don't be fooled." Not because they want to convict a man, but because they want to learn how to walk again in a town where road shoulders remember. In the evidence room, a custodian who has been invisible for 10,000 steps notices a small envelope misfiled because a label lost its stick. She brings it forward like an offering. Inside, a Polaroid from '98, blurry and too bright, of a toolbox in the motel's maintenance shed. No people, no dates, just the kind of accident cameras make when someone's nervous thumb twitches. In the corner of the frame, a shadow that could be a shoe with a zipper tongue. It is not proof. It is proximity dressed as a ghost. The lieutenant places the Polaroid beside the buckle and the blue bead and waits for the geometry of coincidence to fail. It does, finally, because volume generates clarity. Enough almost lean together and become a structure. The anthropologist hits the layer that argues conclusion. Here, rootlets change behavior. Here, soil turns to a darker silk. Here, scavengers were interrupted either by luck or by a man hearing his future. She works slower than prayer and finds what the town has promised to accept, even if they feared it. Bone more certain now, bearing the delicate map of human lines. The grid stops being an idea and becomes a grave. The mother is told with the care of people who know words can be weapons and medicine at once. She sits down because chairs are the only honest technology when the world tips. The brother stands outside and counts clouds and finds 3 and calls them by names from childhood, so memory can hold steady while anger pulls hard. Court again. The judge admits more science with caution carved into the edges. The defense wants to move venue because the town is too loud with history. The DA says there is no place in this state that can't hear the humming of this story if it wants to. The judge splits the difference with a question that tastes like inevitability. Can 12 people anywhere not hear the hum and still do the math? The lieutenant hates this part, the long rooms and the chairs and the slow choreography of evidence. He likes the field where shovel teeth find truth and the lab where machines refrain from opinion. But justice travels through buildings, not just desert, so he sits and watches the current carry their boat. The man looks smaller now, not because time shrank him, but because certainty grew around him like walls. He glances toward the family and stops because something in him, not conscience exactly, but a cousin, suggests he shouldn't. He stares at the table's grain and tries to make maps of its lines. He imagines a different gas station, a different hour, a different him, who went home and watched a movie and slept without ash in his mouth. That him does not exist. He is the him who turned a key that didn't belong to him and rearranged a girl's name into a headline. He can feel the story fixing him to itself, and he hates the glue. The grid closes, the anthropologist rises, stretch of joints like book pages turning. Recovery is careful and complete enough to change verbs from conditional to declarative. The DA blinks hard when the call comes. The lieutenant drives to the porch and stands before the mother because some things should not be delivered from behind podiums. He says her name, the girl's, the town's, his own, all of them braided into a sentence with room for both sorrow and relief. He says there will be more days, each with its own weather. He says she may not ever sleep the way sleep promises. He cannot fix that. He can stand here. She nods. On the coffee table, a stack of flyers, edges soft from years of being handled like the past is made of paper. She lifts one and smooths it flat and sets it down as if this is how you tuck someone in. That night, the radio plays the same chorus and the DJ says nothing, and the town hums at the places where paint wore thin and the neon's ghost flickers in memory only, and people lock their doors without looking away from the sky. The headline tomorrow will say solved again because solved is the closest word we have when a circle touches its start, but inside the word the letters rearrange into still and ache and almost and now. The lieutenant sits at his kitchen table under a bulb that makes honesty out of wood grain and writes his report in the slow, legible hand you use when you understand that your sentences are scaffolding for other people's breathing. He writes buckle, bead, fragment, location, coordinates, witness, wall, A12, receipt, MVAC, genealogy, arrest. He does not write miracle. He does not write closure. He writes the only thing a report can write truthfully: what we found, where, when, how, by whom. He puts his pen down and looks at his hands and lets the silence sit beside him like a friend who doesn't need to talk. At sunrise, the grid is gone. The flags are collected. The earth holds the shape of careful hands. The anthropologist says the word identification and then speaks the name. The town hears. The porch light stays off, not because the wait is over, but because it has become something else, a lamp carried forward. In the cell, the man finally drinks the water. It tastes like defeat, like rain that insists on arriving, like a tongue forced to pronounce regret in a language it never learned. He closes his eyes and sees squares laid out on dirt and knows that even the wind could not help him anymore. The story has closed in a way that leaves room to breathe. It was never a victory parade. It was a vigil, ending not with trumpets, but with a chair pushed back, a room exhaled, a town stepping into a morning that doesn't hurt quite as loudly. The camera that froze at 0112 does not unfreeze. It doesn't have to. We have learned the rest of the frame. We have learned how the shadow leaned, who carried it where it tried to end, and how time, stubborn and ordinary, kept walking until its boots struck metal, then leather, then bone, then the small, unbreakable core of a name that never once stopped being a name. The town wakes to a sky the color of steel and behaves like a place that has learned to whisper around the weight of new facts, slow at first, then quicker, like the way children learn the layout of a dark room. At the coffee place that used to be the gas station, the barista tapes a small card by the register that simply reads her name, and nobody asks which her, because there is only one that matters today. A mason in a dusty truck leans over his thermos and says to nobody that he remembers her counting quarters while he bought cigarettes and a lottery ticket. He didn't scratch for hours because hope tastes better sealed. A teacher on sabbatical finishes her latte and walks past the shelf where motor oil once lined up like obedient soldiers, and it takes effort not to reach out and touch the air where the payphone used to hang. The absence is loud, but the town is getting good at listening. Inside the DA's office, a screen glows with slides that have no mercy in their order. Photograph, exhibit, timestamp, chain code. Each square is a brick in a wall built to withstand reasonable doubt and the 1,000 paper cuts of cross-examination. The DA rehearses, not his performance, but his patience. He will be asked why. Why this test now? Why the cuff? Why the bead? Why not before? He will answer with verbs, not adjectives. Extracted, compared, confirmed. He will resist the itch to say destiny or miracle. Science makes a straighter road than that, even when the asphalt buckles with emotion. The lieutenant stands near the window because he needs the line where sky meets ridge to remind him that horizons keep promises people can't. He folds and unfolds a copy of the old map until its creases become a geometry of penance. He doesn't like the theater of trial. He prefers the workshop of field and lab where work looks like work. But he understands that justice wears different uniforms as it moves through the day, sometimes boots, sometimes robes. Either way, it walks. The defense counsel lays his file across a desk and primes the ink in a fountain pen older than the millennium. He is not the villain the town wants, just a craftsman with tools that cut in ways some people call cruel. He writes phrases he will use like a locksmith: secondary transfer, environmental contamination, alternative explanation, each keyed to a lock he hopes will stick and slow the mechanism. He circles the word coincidence, then draws a line to confluence, an elegant synonym that he trusts will seduce a tired mind at 4 p.m. on day 7 of trial. He flips to a page labeled A12 and underlines complaints of banging, and sketches a bird in a vent because the absurdity helps him remember to be charming when he needs to be. He is not here to decide truth, only to demand proof, and on some nights the difference keeps him from sleep. The community arranges its feelings into rituals. A vigil at dusk, no podiums, no speeches, just the soft discipline of bodies holding candles, wax pooling on paper discs that always fail and always get replaced. Someone sets a photograph on a folding table, the corners repaired with tape that learned patience over years tacked to a telephone pole. The mother stands in the second row, not the first, as if grief must earn its sightline every time. The brother reads faces and assigns them names from shared pasts. The faces have names of their own, but tonight they answer to ours. The DJ from the radio slips in at the back, head down, builds a silence between songs that says more than playlists can. In the weeks after identification, interviews sprout like desert yellow tops after a rare rain. People who once said nothing now say plenty, not because the microphones have multiplied, but because silence has changed shape. The maid talks about keys and room numbers and the way ice machines hum like distant trains when you're alone. The carpenter recalls a panel that fought him and a supervisor who paid in cash and brisk orders. The retired dog handler remembers the heat he hated and the dirt that never apologized and the way the new dog learned the old scent without being told it was history. Each memory is a thread. Together, they begin to braid into something that resembles a net. It won't hold everything, but it will catch enough. Voir dire begins. 12 lives assemble in a room that smells of upholstery and government. Some say they can be fair, some say they can't, and mean it. One says she can't because she lights a porch lamp every night for a cousin no one speaks about. She is excused and thanks the court for letting her be honest in public. Another says his job taught him to distrust new machines. The DA tells him these machines are 30 years old now, older than some of the jurors' children. The man shrugs at the arithmetic and is excused for cause. A teacher who hates true crime shows but collects newspaper clippings like recipes is seated. A mechanic who calls DNA car magic for humans is seated. A nurse who does not look away from pain is seated. 12 chairs acquire owners. The judge breathes. Day 1, the DA stands, not to perform but to name. He lays out the road they will travel, careful to step on stones that hold. The defense follows with a map that goes nowhere, by design, all detours and side streets, because if arrival looks uncertain, home can be redefined. The lieutenant testifies. He keeps his voice level and his sentences square. He says, we, never I, a theology of teamwork he learned in the first months on the job and never unlearned. The cuff in its bag is shown, then placed down with a care that is neither drama nor fear, just respect. MVAC hum is described like rain on a roof. Genealogy is translated into family picnics, where the math of hugs reveals who belongs to whom. Jurors nod in small rhythms. The judge watches their hands. Cross-examination scrapes. The defense asks whether a cuff can hold a story that isn't true. The lieutenant says cuffs hold fibers and facts. People turn those into stories, and that's why we're here. The defense pauses, because balance is an art too. He pivots to the camera that froze at 0112 and wonders aloud if a machine that failed then could fail memory now. The lieutenant says the camera isn't on trial, the man is, and the lab work doesn't freeze. The courtroom exhales a laugh no one wanted, quick, then gone. The judge's eyebrow does 0.5 millimeter of warning and order resumes. Back at the motel, the current owner, new since the year of the eclipse that nobody noticed, agrees to one more look behind A12's wall, not because he thinks something remains, but because thinking has never been a reliable method for predicting what remains. A small camera snakes into the void. The screen shows dust, then insulation, then the smooth grayscale of material that has no intention, then a scratch that has all the intention in the world. Numbers etched faintly into stud wood. 112. Deep enough to outlast repainting, shallow enough to be explained away if you need an explanation. The lieutenant leans toward the screen as if proximity can influence meaning. He doesn't say anything in front of the lens. Later, in his report, he will call it markings of unknown origin, because cautious language is a kind of armor. Alone, he will write 0112 on his palm and wash it off only when it starts to look like superstition. The man's world reduces to corridors and clocks. He chews on the shape of the plea offer like a dog at a locked gate. The number is high, the years stack taller than a person can imagine standing. To accept would be to become a sentence. To reject is to become a bet. His attorney lays out the calculus without poetry. Avoid the needle, die indoors. The man considers the performance of defiance and finds it heavy. He asks about transfer, about units, about appeals, about whether a person can forget the feel of July air on skin. The attorney speaks truth gently. You forget what you don't rehearse. The man stares at his hands, wonders when they stopped being instruments and became inventory, turns the offer over like a coin in an empty room. The mother visits the lieutenant's office because she wants to thank and because she wants to ask for something that will sound unreasonable even to her. She wants a minute with the cuff, not to touch, just to see it without glass between them. The lieutenant weighs rules against the human need to place eyes on the thing that outlived you. He says no in a way that tries to be kind and fails. She nods. like someone who suspected that would be the answer and came anyway to teach herself how to receive limits. He offers the photograph instead. She studies it, then tips it, as if angle could extract warmth from evidence. She whispers 2 words to the bag. The lieutenant looks away to give the whisper privacy it already has. When she leaves, the room feels like a church that doesn't know the name of its god. Night does its work. People dream about squares on dirt and blue beads and motel vents that breathe. The brother dreams he is 13 again, riding his bike along the frontage road, and the neon works and the payphone is busy and she waves without looking up and the frame does not freeze. He wakes with tears and embarrassment. He has learned that both can share a pillow without scandal. He writes down the dream because he is tired of memory owning all the verbs. He wants to own a few. In the lab, someone with a precise wrist and a calendar full of other people's tragedies tries a new angle on an old sample, not because anyone asked, but because curiosity is a mandate written into the bones of the job. The angle yields a partial latent on the zipper tongue, a smear of what might be finger and might be hope, enough to triangulate with the print on the old receipt. It lands within the same house as the suspect's hand, not a smoking gun, a warm one. The DA smiles in the restrained way of a man packing a parachute carefully. Then, noise. A blogger posts a theory that the numbers in the wall are planted, that the lieutenant is the star of his own show, that porch lights are political, that grief is a brand. The town splits and then remembers itself and stitches back without ceremony. The judge issues a reminder about voices that reach jurors. The defense files a motion to gag. The DA calls it theater. The lieutenant throws his phone into a drawer and decides to live like it is 1998 for 2 days. He fails because someone texts a photograph of a candle at the vigil, and he opens it against his own rules and lets the light in. On day 6, a witness appears who had not appeared in any rehearsal. The night clerk from the station, long moved, now sober, now ready. He takes the oath, trembles, steadies. He says a man came in that summer not to buy, to linger the way people who study rooms for exits linger. He says the man asked about lost keys, about how many were on the ring, about whether the back alley camera ever worked. He shows a hand gesture he remembers, a downward chopping motion, as if trial could be edited with a wrist. The defense cross-examines with a scalpel. Memory is unreliable. Sobriety is new. Time is a contortionist. The clerk agrees to all of it, and then says, "Still, I remember." The jurors write it down without glancing at one another, because choreography is frowned upon. The plea offer expires at noon on a Tuesday and is not accepted. There is a brittle triumph in the DA's office and a muted dread, 2 roommates who never agreed to share rent. The mother hears and sits very still a long time. She had prepared herself for both doors and found stairs behind each. The brother stands in the yard and looks up at a sky that will not translate itself. He says into the air that he will go to every day of the trial and he will wear the same denim jacket every day and he will sew 2 stars on the cuff by hand. He pricks his finger. A bead of red rises like a period at the end of a long sentence. The day before the state rests, the lieutenant returns alone to the dry lake, not to gather, to listen. He kneels at the place where Grid once met Grid and whispers a report he cannot file. We kept going. We didn't stop where the wind told us to. We kept the names first. He stands. The desert is not changed by his words. He didn't expect it to be. He drives back under a sky that has forgiven other men and never signed a contract to forgive him. In the mirror, the billboard's skeleton shrinks to a white spine against blue. He wonders who will replace it and what it will sell, and whether anybody will care that underneath the new promise is a ledger of what a town endures to keep its stories honest. The trial will break and reconvene. The seasons will catch up. The headlines will practice restraint and then forget. The coffee place will run out of lids and borrow from next door. The courthouse hallway will learn the paths of those who pace. And still there will be the center, the sentence that never gets tired of being true. A girl walked into a summer night and the world betrayed its duty to protect her. And years later, the world tried, imperfectly, to make a different kind of promise. The jury will be asked to translate that into law. The town will be asked to translate verdict into breath. The lieutenant will sleep a little in a chair. The mother will hold a photograph like a map. The brother will sew 2 stars and finish the second after midnight, because some stitches are only possible when the house is quiet enough to hear thread rasp through denim. Shadows lengthen on the courthouse steps. Reporters pack their tripods like pilgrims unsnapping tents. The neon that used to hum has long gone silent, but somewhere a transformer in a different town makes the same tired music. The camera that froze at 0112 still refuses to move. It doesn't need to. Everything else is moving now. The door to the jury room swings open with a modest click that sounds like the start of a sentence whose ending nobody will agree on, but everyone will have to live with. The jury room smells like pencil shavings and a clock that knows how to stare. 12 chairs, 12 elbows, learning the choreography of patience. The foreperson lays out the forms with the care of someone iron-pressing a shirt for the last first day of school. No speeches, no grandstanding, just the slow arithmetic of evidence and a door that clicks shut with the weight of 27 years. On the wall, a laminated poster reminds them words like proof and reasonable have bones. They begin with the cuff because everything keeps circling back to the cuff, 2 stitched stars holding their own tiny night. The nurse says fibers don't lie. The mechanic says machines don't care about tears. The teacher says the chain was clean and the chain is church. Someone wonders aloud if cold case is a spell reporters cast or a diagnosis the world gives itself when it can't afford a cure. The foreperson writes cuff eels origin in tidy block letters and underlines it twice. Down the hall, the defense calls their last witness, a specialist with wire-rimmed glasses who describes contamination like a ghost story told by a scientist. Slow and plausible. He says touch DNA can travel, that laundry is a conspiracy, that skin drifts without permission. The DA lets him finish, thanks him, and then asks a question with an index finger that doesn't wag. Okay, but what if the same drift lands on the same person's life 3 times? Cuff, hem, towel in A12, receipt. The specialist admits drift can cluster, but not with the deliberate poetry on display here. He folds his hands. The defense rephrases, adjusts, retreats. In the second row, the mother doesn't blink. She has learned that blinking is a permission slip for panic. Back in the room with the clock, they talk about A12, about the bird that was never a bird, about the stud marks faint as a whisper, 112, a superstition carved into wood by a man who thought numbers could be talismans against consequences. The juror who collects clippings says patterns love to wear disguises. The juror who hates true crime says disguises fail at scale. The foreperson draws a rectangle on legal paper and labels it A12, and shades a corner where the panel once pretended to fit. Every small fact acquires gravity. The crows on the peeled billboard, the sign foot buried like a secret that lost its nerve, the blue bead that matched the memory of a cheap bracelet blister-packed on an aisle that lied and called itself beauty. They don't need those to convict, but people like maps and maps like landmarks, and everything here keeps pointing the same way. The lieutenant waits in a long hallway with the calm of someone who has learned to breathe on bad days. He watches light crawl across tile, remembers a younger him drinking terrible coffee and promising a porch light that he wouldn't stop. He thinks of the MVAC, the way its hum has replaced the camera's silence in his inner soundtrack. He thinks of the night clerk's downward chopping gesture, the motion of erasure. He thinks of the maintenance man's pickup, primer gray scars like excuses. He doesn't pray, he inventories. Buckle, bead, zipper tongue, partial latent, ancestry branches that didn't ask to be a compass and did anyway. In his pocket, a folded paper creases like a topographical map, a personal superstition, the original flyer. He hasn't unfolded it today. He tells himself it's because the edges are tender. He knows it's because some doors should only open with both hands. Defense closes by asking for the courage to doubt. The DA closes by asking for the courage to name. Neither raises their voice. The judge reads instructions with the steadiness of a bridge that's carried this town across storms before. The bailiff collects phones, looks like a shepherd who knows every wolf by nickname. The room empties and the building holds a different kind of quiet, one made of pencils tapping and a candy wrapper apologizing under a table leg and the smallest kinds of prayers. Let them see what we saw. Let them see what we missed. Let them see. Deliberations loop back to time, 0112. They talk about machines that freeze and nights that don't, about the way an hour can become an altar. The teacher remembers the judge's phrasing, "You are not historians, you are translators. Translate proof into law." She says the translation is clear, then asks them to prove her wrong. No one can. The mechanic says the trunk carpet fiber story reads like a repair manual. Match, fit, torque. The nurse says the towel from A12 holds pressure points only a body in panic would make. The juror with porch light eyes says a mother's necklace missing beads is not evidence, but it is a compass. It tells you where true north sits in your ribs. They take a first vote, not to end anything, just to practice agreeing. The paper comes back with a shape. The shape repeats on a second pass, a third, a fourth. They don't rush it. They talk about words again, the difference between certainty and the kind you can take to a bank that deals in years. They mark one box on one form and line forms up until the table looks like a road. The door opens, the click echoes, It doesn't matter what anyone says about not reading faces. Everyone reads faces. The lieutenant keeps his expression blank and fails. The DA keeps his shoulders level and succeeds by habit. The defense straightens his tie in a gesture as old as theater. The man looks up with eyes that flinch like bulbs asked to wake. The mother rubs the pad of her thumb across the corner of a photograph as if coaxing a crease to forgive her. The brother sits with his jacket cuff turned just enough to show the stars he sewed after midnight. The judge asks if they have reached. The foreperson says yes. They stand. The clerk asks the questions in a voice that understands the difference between drama and duty. Guilty on count 1. Guilty on count 2. Guilty on special. The word settles in layers. It is not triumph. It is not a parade. It is a diagnosis and a sentence and a bell rung once and forever. The man's shoulders drop, not with relief, not with remorse, with the end of a performance he can no longer fund. The defense asks for polling. The jurors say yes one after another, each yes a small stone placed on a grave because hands need tasks. The mother exhales in segments. The brother's jaw shakes and then finds steel. The lieutenant closes his eyes for the length of one heartbeat and opens them on a world that has moved half an inch closer to a promise. Reporters step outside to talk to cameras because the hallway feels like church and microphones aren't always welcome in sanctuaries. They say, cold case solved, and shocked community finds verdict, and mysterious disappearance gains a name in law, and for once the verbs do not feel like theft. The DA reads a statement that he wrote in 3 versions and discarded 2. He sticks with the one that leaves room for human weather. The defense thanks the court and says the word appealed gently, like something to be left on a shelf and dusted once a month. The judge sets a date for sentencing and reminds the jury about the privacy they've earned. The foreperson nods like someone who has carried something heavy and can finally set it down on a counter that was built for that purpose. Night arrives early on verdict days. The vigil becomes a gathering without instruction. The coffee place saves cups with her name written in block letters and keeps them behind the counter like relics it will never sell. A stranger pays for a stranger because generosity feels like a tool with immediate effect. The DJ plays the same chorus and doesn't say why. He doesn't have to. Neon that doesn't exist anymore hums in memory like tinnitus. A man who once brought a shovel to a truck bed sits in a cell and squeezes the edge of a metal bench until his knuckles go to chalk. He whispers to a clock that answers with seconds that sound like boot steps down a hall he won't walk for a while. The lieutenant drives the long way home past the dry lake, the knot meadow, the road that learns to confess at 1 a.m. He parks where the flags once marked squares and lets the engine tick itself to sleep. He takes the folded flyer from his pocket and smooths it flat on the steering wheel and says her name into the paper because paper listens better than air. He says, "We brought you back the way men in bad weather bring in boats. Ropes, shouts, stubbornness, bruises you don't notice until morning." He says it wasn't enough, and it was everything. He says sentences that don't require answers. Sentencing day waits like an appointment with a dentist you owe pain to. Before it arrives, there is bureaucracy that wants to play human, victim impact, pre-sentence reports, letters that choose their adjectives carefully and still end up trembling. The mother writes 3 drafts and keeps the one that reads like a map. The brother writes on notebook paper and doesn't cross anything out. He leaves the misspellings because they tell the truth about shaking hands. The DA's office prints them on clean paper and adds them to a folder whose clips are at their limits. In a maintenance shed that smells like dust learning bankruptcy, the current motel owner removes an old toolbox and finds etched beneath it a circle like a coin, rubbed down to anonymity. He calls the lieutenant. The lieutenant says thank you and tells him to throw the box out anyway. Then, a surprise. The night clerk returns on his own. No subpoena, no agenda, just a man who wants to calibrate his story 1 degree closer to mercy. He says he remembers a second thing, the suspect's laugh, not the sound, the speed, how it arrived late, how it tried to catch up. He wonders if that's how fear laughs inside the people who make it. The lieutenant writes it down, knowing it won't go into any official document, and keeps it anyway, because unofficial truths prop official ones up when nobody's looking. When sentencing lands, the courtroom is full but not crowded. People leave a seat empty without agreeing to, the way towns do when they are remembering the absent as an active job. The DA reads the statute as if reciting coordinates. The defense asks for less with the skill of a man who knows the court's math by heart. The judge speaks in the slow, exact pace of a tide. Life without, counts to run, special to stand, parole as a word that has no place in this sentence. The gavel is gentle because wood understands wood. The man stares at a spot past the judge's left shoulder and doesn't blink until it's over. He is escorted out. He does not look back, not because he's brave, because the past is a wall and he's learned at last that running into it won't make a door. Outside, the sky looks ordinary, which is the most generous thing it could have done. The porch light stays off by design. The mother sits with the lieutenant on the steps and shares the quiet like a blanket. The brother stands and watches the first star appear and tries not to assign meaning and fails and doesn't apologize. The headline will say, Nevada 1998 cold case solved, sentence brings closure, and the town will tolerate the word because there isn't a better one built yet. The truth is more granular. The camera still froze at 0112. The cuff still carries stars. The desert still holds wind, and a community that learned to whisper its grief has found a way to speak it. Tomorrow, the coffee place will open, the mason will buy a ticket, he'll forget to scratch, the teacher will touch the empty air where the payphone once hung and almost reached through. And the lieutenant will wake before dawn, brew coffee that still tastes like a battery, and start another day of work that has learned to live beside a miracle it refuses to call a miracle. The calendar turns without ceremony, and the town learns the gate of after. Headlines cool to room temperature. The coffee place stops refilling the tip jar with folded flyers because the paper is finally archival, not operational. A maintenance crew replaces the alley light that always buzzed, and for a week people think the new tone is a sign, then forget. The lieutenant signs 3 forms that move the case from active to adjudicated and feels none of the satisfaction the labels promise. He brings donuts to the lab because he remembers the hum that made a path where a camera froze, and sugar is how you thank machines by proxy. The technician smiles with eyes that have watched numbers become names and says she's transferring to a unit dedicated to someday work. It's the only place she trusts her pulse. Appeal notices arrive like junk mail dressed in Latin. The DA files replies with the patience of a mason, stacking identical bricks, knowing the wall won't be beautiful, only necessary. The defense argues trees and thresholds drift in studies. The appellate clerk stamps dates that will matter to exactly 12 people and be invisible to everyone else. The mother keeps a small calendar by the stove for new hearings she will not attend, not because she doesn't care, because she knows the difference between duty and self-harm now. The brother fixes a squeak in the screen door and sews a 3rd star onto his cuff, not for evidence, for the private geometry of survival. At the motel, the new owner removes the room numbers and replaces them with letters because numbers feel haunted now. A12 becomes L. Superstition in paint. The maid says it helps her turn keys without thinking of old vents. A travel blogger posts a photo of the refurbished pool and calls the place vintage desert chic. And the town clicks the heart, not because they agree, because agreeing would require verbs they're not ready to use, but because indifference is a poor defense, and community is built with small tolerances. The billboard gets a new face selling tires that promise to outlast weather. The skeleton underneath pretends not to remember being naked. The cold case unit expands by 2 desks, a victory disguised as furniture. The lieutenant walks rookies past binders with names that could be headlines and teaches them how to read dust. He says, never chase myth, chase method. He says, take one more swab after you think you're done. He says, never let the word closure into your reports. He says, if you find a cuff with stars, sit down before you open the bag. They nod and write it all down like scripture and then learn by failing and coming back, which is the only way scripture earns breath. A podcaster calls asking for an interview, promising empathy in long form, saying the word platform with earnest eyes the phone can't show. The lieutenant declines because microphones have their own weather, and this town has had enough wind. He suggests the anthropologist instead. Bones deserve a voice that doesn't romanticize dirt. She agrees, speaks in measured paragraphs about root etching and respectful recovery, and an audience in cities without deserts stops the episode halfway through to look out windows at their own ground, wondering what it holds. On a Wednesday that smells like rain that won't arrive, the mother decides to clear the hall closet where she keeps the box, the one everyone knows about and no one opens without asking. She lifts the lid and finds the ritual objects of a frozen year. Ribbons, a science fair ribbon that should have been 2nd place but was 3rd because a judge had a nephew, a mixtape titled Road Songs in someone else's handwriting, a pay stub with smiley faces drawn in the margins, a denim patch with 2 tiny back stitches, the practice run before the cuff that learned to be evidence. She sorts, she keeps, she releases. She writes a letter to the lieutenant she won't send, thanking him for telling the truth gently and not fixing what can't be fixed. She puts the letter on top of the box and closes the lid. It is enough that the words exist somewhere gravity can see. The man files paperwork from a place where time has walls and learns chess because someone tells him it makes afternoons smaller. He loses to a teenager serving 5 who plays like a quiet storm and never gloats. He looks at the board and tries to find the square that corresponds to 0112, as if he could occupy it and undo pressure on all other pieces. He can't. He wakes occasionally to a dream of a room that will not fit its panel, a vent that breathes backward, a laugh that shows up late and leaves first. He asks for earplugs and gets them. They don't change the soundtrack. A cemetery that once felt hypothetical grows by a plot with no stone yet. The anthropologist attends the burial, stands in the back, refuses to be thanked because her job is an instrument, not a solo. The pastor reads a psalm without explaining it. It's the first kind thing Scripture has done in a long time. The town keeps its coat zipped and its throats clear and its eyes dry and lets the shovel sound ring like a bell that knows exactly what it's for. The DJ doesn't cover the service. He plays the chorus at dusk and turns down the studio lights, and a woman in a different county pulls over and cries into a steering wheel without needing to know why. A letter arrives for the lieutenant from a stranger 3 states away. Inside, a photocopy of a yearbook page and a note. Your case made me look again. My sister, 1996. Different state, same math. Can you tell me who to call? He writes back with the names of a lab and a detective who hasn't yet learned the taste of battery coffee and underlines the word persistence. He doesn't promise anything. He staples the letter to a photocopy of the MVAC request form from this case, as if paper can introduce paper across distance and breed outcomes. He mails it and sits still until the impulse to follow the envelope out the door passes. The coffee place starts a quiet scholarship in her name for kids who don't know how to ask for things. Applicants write short essays about road safety and late shifts and what a porch light means. The essays are uneven and true. The first winner buys a secondhand motorcycle helmet and a bus pass with the money and writes a thank you note that says, I am learning to arrive. The barista tapes it next to the card with her name. No explanation. The regulars touch the tape edge like a talisman. The rookies close a small case with a big shadow, a stolen box of ashes returned to a mantle without fanfare. The lieutenant smiles like a man who has learned the scale of victories and says, good work, mean it. He walks the dry lake at lunch in shoes that don't forgive salt and watches wind write and erase low messages no one will read. He thinks about the camera that froze and wonders what it would have shown if it had lived. The arc of a shadow, the tilt of a head, the last ordinary gesture of a girl locking a door. He decides finally that not knowing is part of the sentence the town carries, and that sentences can be borne without breaking if you distribute their weight across enough shoulders. An anniversary comes, not the one the paper will note, the other one, private and precise, the hour the mother turned off the porch light and left it off on purpose. She marks it by sitting on the steps without her coat, letting the cold instruct her lungs. The brother joins her and doesn't speak. Across town, the lieutenant sets a cup on the evidence room counter and listens to the hum like a metronome. In a cell, the man stares at a crack that looks like a road on a map that isn't his anymore. In a motel, room L receives a couple from Phoenix who sleep like the walls are just walls. The appeal returns with pages that affirm and pages that remand nothing and the kind of terse congratulations the law gives itself. The DA reads it, nods once, files it, and sends an email with 2 words, as expected, because language is a tool and it's after hours. The lieutenant deletes the draft text he almost sent to the mother because some news is better carried by silence. The town keeps moving like a person who learned to walk again after a long winter. Careful at first, then with a little speed, then with a pace that feels like itself. That night, the DJ tries a different song and then stops and plays the chorus everyone knows, not because tradition demands it, because habits can be a life raft when you're crossing a channel you can't see the other side of. A kid on a bike pedals past the coffee place, past the empty space where a payphone once hung, past the alley where keys once shone under a bad light, and turns his head at the corner where the billboard used to peel. He doesn't know the history, he knows the road. He will learn the names later, if he needs to. For now, he rides into a dark that is not empty, that is crowded with signs, some of them pointing forward for once. The town, practiced now, hums at a frequency that doesn't demand headlines to prove it is alive. The desert exhales. The clock in the evidence room ticks. Somewhere a porch light flips on for a different family at a different hour, not as a vigil, as a welcome. And the difference is a small, precise miracle no one will call by that name. The storm finally arrives on a Tuesday afternoon that smells like wet dust and electricity, a storm that has been practicing on the horizon for months and chooses a day when the courthouse calendar is blank and the coffee place runs out of lids. Rain hits the dry lake like handwriting trying to catch up with a sentence that went on too long. The town pauses to listen, citizens at windows holding mugs the way sailors hold rails. The lieutenant stands under the loading bay awning behind the station and watches a ribbon of water find a groove and commit to it, a small physics that feels like a parable he isn't ready to translate. The rookies laugh at thunder and then pretend they weren't startled. Someone says this kind of storm changes the smell of the motels for days. Someone else says motels keep their own weather anyway. Inside the evidence room, the hum softens under rain. The technician who stayed late to finish a report on a different case lets the sound braid with her breathing and realizes this is the first time in months the building hasn't felt like a museum of dry air. She thinks about the cuff, about the constellation it carried, about how 2-stitched stars can become a compass if you are desperate enough. She does not romanticize the work, and yet the storm invites a kind of reverence the fluorescence never could. She shuts off the desk lamp and lets the room glow the way the past likes to be remembered, dim, careful, stubborn against oblivion. At the motel, now known by letters, Room L leaks. Not a flood, a whisper from the seam where a new owner's optimism met an old roof's memory. The maid sets a towel and writes a note in neat block letters that apologizes for the water and the world. A couple from Phoenix turns the noise into an excuse to talk instead of sleeping with their phones. They ask each other about a summer job they had as teenagers, about the sound of ice machines, about the shape of fear in a place where everyone is a stranger. They do not know they are rehearsing lines this building has heard in a dozen dialects. They leave in the morning and forget the conversation and remember the rain. The mother sits at the kitchen table with the box closed and a kettle clicking toward boil. She loves storms, always has, but this one edges into a room she keeps locked. She lets it. She opens the back door and lets the wind slip a hand under the edge of the mat and consider lifting it. She places a palm on the doorframe and finds the notch she carved the year her children were small, a height mark no one else can see unless they know where to look. She whispers 2 names to the wood, one present, one past, and then adds the date in her head because saying it out loud would be too much like writing it into law. The kettle clicks off. She doesn't pour. She waits for the thunder to pause and says thank you to nobody in particular. The brother goes running into the rain without his jacket because jackets are for other months. He takes the frontage road past the coffee place and the bare square of wall where the payphone once hung. And for a block he imagines he can see the outline of the receiver like a chalk drawing on concrete after the artist left town. He runs past the alley where the light has a new tone and feels irrational annoyance at the tone for not being the old one, then laughs at himself and splashes a puddle like a kid on purpose. At the corner, the billboard is newly clothed in a tire promise, and water slides down the image in lines that look like speed. He tips his face up and lets rain find his eyelashes and decides he will stop dodging state lines. He texts a friend in another county who runs a small nonprofit that does boring essential things and offers to design flyers. He doesn't mention stars. He doesn't need to. The man in the cell watches his window find gray and work with it. Rain in this place is a rumor at best, and yet today it smells almost true, damp in the lint, from a laundry that hasn't learned the difference between storms and superstitions. He stands at the glass and tries to name the color of the sky. The names fail. He looks down at the chessboard set for a game with the kid who beats him and sees for the first time that all squares are the same size, and the illusion of power is a function of place, not peace. It should have occurred to him earlier. This is the first lesson he recognizes as a lesson instead of a punishment. He rearranges pawns, practicing openings he will forget by evening, and tries to hear what the rain says about time. It says not much. It says now. The night clerk, sober a year and a half, stands in the door of the recovery center and watches the parking lot shine like a piano lid. He thinks of the downward chopping gesture he showed the court and how his wrist remembers it even when his mouth is occupied with a sponsor's phone number. He sips coffee he is not supposed to have after noon. He takes it anyway. He thinks about keys, about rings, about how many carry weight and how many pretend to. He promised himself he would not make his life a commentary track to someone else's story. He feels the edge of the promise and steps away from it, back into his own day. He checks the volunteer calendar, sees his name in a slot that used to have an empty line, and smiles the kind of smile that arrives on time. The lieutenant puts on a jacket he hasn't needed since the winter when porch lights learned to be verbs, and walks into the rain with a clipboard because walking in storms is the closest he comes to prayer. He parks by the dry lake and wanders to the place where grids used to make meaning, and the flags had the color of small sunsets. The ground drinks for a while and then begins to push back, puddles forming like eyes blinking awake. He kneels where memory insists the buckle lay, and rests a hand on the exact air above it. He closes his eyes and lets the storm redraw the horizon line in a hand less interested in narrative than in gravity. He thinks about tools. He thinks about the MVAC, about the cheapness of the towel from Room L, about a lab tech whose steady wrist taught numbers to sing. He thinks about how every victory was really a rehearsal of competence performed until it was indistinguishable from grace. A call comes in as he's driving back, a rookie voice doing its best imitation of Level. A different case, a different year, a box in an attic that gave up a camera that didn't freeze. A home video from a birthday party contains in the corner of a frame a face that wants not to be seen. The family didn't notice for decades because the candle flames on the cake were brighter than the shadow against the sliding door. The rookie asks if he should bring it in or call the unit that handles crimes against children. The lieutenant says both. The world doesn't split into lanes that cleanly. He says to wear gloves, even now, even when it feels too late for gloves. He says to breathe all the way to the bottom of the lungs before pressing play. The rookie says, okay, like a vow. Later, he stops at the coffee place to dry his cuffs, and the barista hands him a cup without asking his order. The card with her name still sits by the register, the tape corners curling in humidity like flowers after rain. A new note is taped beside it, the thank you from the scholarship kid. I am learning to arrive. He touches the edge of the paper because superstition has been promoted to ritual, and rituals are what you build when you can't build endings. He sits by the window, watches tires move through water like good decisions, and lets the taste of coffee be ordinary for once. The anthropologist sends an email with a photograph attached, a close-up of a single bead cleaned and cataloged, the blue now subdued under lab light but still stubbornly itself. The subject line reads simply artifact, no flourish, no eulogy, just the small dignity of a noun. The lieutenant replies with thanks and a question about a training she suggested, a workshop for deputies on evidence recovery in hostile terrain. She writes back with a file full of slides, root etching, soil densities, burial signatures. He forwards it to the rookies with a note that says, show up, wear boots you can afford to ruin, and bring a pencil that writes in rain. The DJ does not play the chorus tonight. He builds a set that tastes like water on tin, songs without lyrics for the first half hour, instruments that remind listeners that mouths are not the only way to testify. Calls come in anyway, people asking for the song everyone knows. He says not tonight kindly, and the callers understand without understanding. They sit with their hands on their own steering wheels and breathe through long red lights. On the outskirts, a semi rolls through a wash that hasn't seen a truck in years, and the driver laughs out loud at the sensation of tires hissing like applause. By morning, the storm has moved on, leaving behind a hush that makes coin jars and coughs sound louder. The courthouse steps sport a thin line of mud that looks like a hem. The motel smells cleaner than it deserves. The evidence room hum resumes its regular confidence. In the jail, the kid beats the man at chess again and offers to teach an endgame. The man says yes and means it and is surprised at his own sincerity. The mother opens the closet and takes out the box and doesn't open it, just moves it to the top shelf where other boxes hold other seasons, a migration that counts as progress in a language she is learning by touch. Later that week, a public defender from another county calls the lieutenant to ask about the genealogy protocols, respectful and wary, explaining he has a client in a case with similar numbers and different edges. The lieutenant shares the policy like a recipe: how to request, how to blind, how to keep hands clean and chains intact. He speaks plainly and refuses the gravitational pull of arrogance. He remembers that truth does not care if you like the mouths it travels in. When he hangs up, he writes a line in his notebook: share anyway. A teacher at the high school assigns an essay with an open prompt. Write about a light you turned on and why. The papers are better than they have any right to be. One student writes about the interior dome light of a car and how it makes confessions easier. Another writes about the glow of a fish tank at 3 a.m., keeping a house sane. A third writes about a porch in a town and a woman who is a mother to the word endurance. And the teacher marks the margins with fewer corrections than usual because some grammar mistakes are really just breath marks in a long sentence about survival. A small hearing on a minor motion unfolds in the same courtroom that held the verdict, and a janitor, sweeping the aisle in the afternoon, pauses to look at the ceiling and the corners where dust collects and thinks about how rooms learn what they host. He does not believe in ghosts, but he believes in residue, in the way air holds onto stories, the way clothes hold onto smoke. He sweeps a little slower. He imagines his broom erasing the parts that make people wince and leaving behind the part that lets them breathe. He knows it doesn't work that way. He sweeps anyway. The rookies bring in the home video. The face in the corner is a rumor in pixels, and still the stomach drops. In the background, a cake, 7 candles, a dog terrified of hats. In the reflection, a figure who belongs to the story only as a warning, watching through a sliding door before the family learned to check locks. The lieutenant feels the old current move through his ribs, the one that carries words like now and go and don't wait for permission. He signs the request for enhancement. He calls the unit that takes families apart and puts them back together. He writes the name of his old mentor on a sticky note and puts it on the monitor. Remember method. He thinks of the cuff again, the stars, the line between artifact and relic, the way a small thing can be a map. The mother volunteers at the coffee place on Saturdays now, 1 hour at a time, wiping tables with care that would seem comical if you didn't know what it was for. She laughs with the barista about lids and how storms discover leaks that sunny days lie about. She refills the napkin holders and reorganizes the shelf where motor oil used to stand disguised as soldiers. An old customer back in town for a weekend sees her and freezes, then puts his hand over his heart in a gesture he didn't plan. She nods. He orders a coffee he doesn't want and leaves money he can't afford. She pockets the gesture, not the cash, and puts both where they will do the most good. On a Sunday evening after the storm has wrung itself out, the lieutenant drives the long way home again. He passes the dry lake now pretending to be otherwise and the road that confessed at 1 a.m. and the place where flags taught Earth to speak in squares. He says out loud that he will retire in a year. The car doesn't answer. The sky doesn't vote. He says it again, to see if the word feels truer the second time. It does. He imagines bringing a rook to carry his lessons forward and watching from a porch that has forgotten how to be a vigil and relearned how to be welcome. He imagines coffee that tastes like something besides a battery. He imagines listening to rain and letting it be rain and not metaphor. Somewhere a kid pedals a bike under a streetlight that has just learned how to be ordinary again, and his tires leave 2 dark lines on wet pavement that look like quotation marks around a claim nobody intends to contest. The DJ finally plays the chorus again, but lowers it under a voice actor reading the weather report, and the blend makes a new kind of music that feels like a promise without specifying terms. In a cell, a man moves a pawn and tries to remember the name of a man he used to be. In a motel, room L doesn't leak tonight. In the evidence room, the hum holds. In the town, breath arranges itself around days that are not headlines, and that is the most radical change of all. The thing about storms is the way they leave as quietly as they arrived, having altered the color of dust and the temper of doors. The thing about cases is the way they end and don't. The thing about towns is the way they learn to sing again at a register that doesn't need microphones. If you listen, you can hear the neon hum, faint but honest, inside the wiring of a different sign that sells something as unromantic as tires. You can hear coins slide in a jar that now exists to help someone go to school instead of fund search flyers. You can hear the clock in the evidence room stutter once, and then settle into a beat that sounds like resolve. And if you stand under the alley light and let your eyes adjust, you can see exactly what you need to see. A door that used to be an omen now behaving itself, a street that knows where it is going, a horizon that makes no promises and keeps them anyway. The home video face becomes a new kind of hum in the background, not a headline yet, a pulse in the corner of the room that makes clocks behave like witnesses. The lieutenant watches the enhancement frame by frame while the rookies practice patience out loud, which always sounds like running. The figure is there and not there, reflection on glass and shadow inside a sliding door track, a contour that does not belong in birthday light. The dog in the video stares at that corner and you can feel the old instinct rise, the one that keeps people alive when memory would prefer comfort. He pauses the tape with the finger of a man who understands that a pause is a tool. He breathes until the urge to invent names passes. He tells the rookies what he was told once. Do not make this a story. Make it a sequence, and stories will volunteer when they're ready. He drives home on a road rinsed clean of storm scent and pulls into a routine that now includes not sleeping like a job. The coffee tastes less like a battery these days, maybe habit, maybe mercy. He opens a drawer where he keeps the old map and the folded flyer, and against his own superstition adds a new thing, a printout of a single still from the home video, cropped to the reflection, no cake, no hats, just the posture of intent at a glass door. He writes the date in the lower right corner like an apology for letting another story into a house that has just learned to be quiet. He doesn't hang it. He sets it under the map. He tells himself it's to keep paper flat. He knows it's to keep the past company. The mother learns how to occupy an afternoon without measuring it against a porch light. She shops for a lamp the way people shop for apologies, touching shades, tapping bases. She chooses one with a pull chain and a warm bulb that makes photographs tell the truth without cruelty. She sets it on the hall table where the box once sat and pulls the chain just to hear the click. Small sounds are a language she is fluent in now. She writes a card to the scholarship kid and uses a line she has rehearsed. You do not have to be brave to keep going. Going becomes brave when you keep it. She signs only her first name because names multiply meanings when you're not careful. She stamps, addresses, seals. She doesn't look at the date. She lets the mail carry the rest. The brother designs flyers for the nonprofit like they are talismans against the vague gravity of bad nights. He prints proofs and lines them up on the kitchen table. Squares of color arguing for shelters, clinics, office hours that beginners can survive. He catches himself creating a logo with 2 small stars near the corner and stops, smiles, leaves them anyway. This time not as a warning, as a signature. He texts the lieutenant a picture of the stack and gets back a single word, solid. And the small weight of the word makes the table steadier. He bikes them over to a print shop that smells like toner and dust in the old childhood library. The clerk rings him up and says she remembers the porch and the light and the way the neighborhood sounded different for a while, like a throat clearing that wasn't a cough. He nods and doesn't explain. She doesn't ask. It's enough to stand under the same sentence and not need verbs. The man in the cell writes his first letter in years and tears it up and writes it again. The words won't arrange in the shape he needs them to. No apology, no surrender, no confession, something between inventory and an equation he can't solve. He starts with to whom and hates it. He starts with a name and hates that more. He writes, I am not asking for forgiveness, and then spends 10 minutes fighting the urge to lie. He settles on a history of a day that did not matter to anyone else. The way sun bled on a wall at 5:13, the smell of bleach in a hallway he didn't mop, the noise a keyring makes when it decides to tell a story or not. He doesn't mail it. He folds it small and hides it in a book he isn't reading. He tells himself it is practice, as if rehearsal can absolve. The rookies take the home video to a lab that doesn't wear ties and knows how to teach pixels to confess. The engineer speaks a language of compression and noise reduction and rolls his chair to a bank of screens like a pilot. He pastes rectangles around the reflection, around a sleeve hem, around the angle of a jaw that could be any man's and also one man's if you listen to your blood. He cautions against promises. He produces possibilities. The lieutenant says possibilities are the front porch of facts. We knock, we wait, we don't climb through windows. The engineer nods and returns to math. A letter arrives at the DA's office addressed to the town. It's typed and unsigned and doesn't threaten or demand. It recounts a night in '98, when a person now older and sober and restful drove past the station and saw a girl lock a door and count quarters and wanted to stop and say something stupid and decent like, be careful, and didn't. I have spent the cost of that silence, the letter says, plain as drywall. The DA reads it twice and keeps it, not as evidence, as a parable nobody will preach. He does not show it to the mother, he shows it to the lieutenant. The lieutenant folds it once and places it behind the flyer and the still and says out loud to the empty office that regret is a tax on the living and the rate is always variable. At the motel, Room L's new leak is fixed by a handyman who whistles off key and knows where water prefers to travel. He finds a line of nails that never bit wood and taps each one home, a ritual that feels like punctuation. He jokes with the maid about Storm's writing messages and she nods because some jokes are true and don't need to be clever. In the corner of the maintenance closet where the old toolbox sat, a spider has built a web that looks like the outline of a state nobody can place on a map. The maid lets it be. Not all architecture needs permits. A school assembly invites the lieutenant to speak on community resilience, a phrase that makes his tongue itch, and he considers saying no and then says yes because rookies and kids are made of the same stubborn material. He stands on a stage that once introduced a talent show act involving glow sticks and speaks in short sentences like stepping stones. He says we didn't give up because quitting and stopping are different verbs. He says science is patient. Be patient with science, even when you want it to be a miracle. He says name people out loud so they don't turn into cases. He says keep your porch lights working for reasons that have nothing to do with fear. He doesn't mention 112. He doesn't need to. In the third row, a kid with a denim jacket and thread in his pocket listens like he's memorizing piano scales. Afterward, the principal thanks him with a handshake that doesn't apologize for being formal. The lieutenant goes home and takes his jacket off and sits without turning on the television and lets the quiet climb onto the couch and not ask for anything. Appeals don't end, they dim. The defense files a petition that lands softly and goes nowhere slow. The judge's order is tidy and lacks adjectives, a kindness disguised as austerity. The mother reads the headline and feels exactly nothing, a plateau that terrifies her for a moment until she recognizes it as rest. She waters a plant she can keep alive and doesn't read the comments. She walks past the hall table where the new lamp turns photographs into proof of a life and touches the pull chain like a rosary. She doesn't pray. She counts. The DJ experiments with silence during the slot where the chorus used to live, a minute and a half of rain recorded outside his studio during the storm. Listeners call in to ask if their radios broke. He says no, that's weather. He thinks about playing a recording of the evidence room hum, but decides that belongs to a different alphabet. Instead, he lines up 2 songs that share a rhythm with lab machines and lets the beat do an honest day's work. Near dusk on a Thursday that tastes like the inside of a coin, the lieutenant walks into the coffee place and finds the barista rearranging a bulletin board. She hands him a pushpin and a stack of cards from a sign shop offering discounts to nonprofits. He pins them by the scholarship note and the name card and a printout for a free self-defense class in the school gym. The board looks like a town learning to speak in public again without shouting. He buys 2 coffees, takes one to the anthropologist at her lab, and thanks her again without reasons. She shows him a drawer of artifacts labeled in a hand that could double as music: bead, buckle, comb tooth, fiber, and he watches the drawer close like a curtain on a play that refused applause. Then a tremor. The lab engineer calls about the home video face with a tone that is neither triumph nor shrug, something between. He has isolated a reflection of a badge clipped low, not police, a security company logo from a chain store that closed in 2004. The angle is wrong for identification, but right for a net. The lieutenant pulls a list: old contracts, a roster of men paid too little to watch doors that locked themselves. He recognizes a surname that once drifted past the edge of another file. Unrelated then, maybe not now. He does not say the name out loud. He prints the page, circles the candidates, calls a unit across county lines because lines are lies, and asks for a copy of a 1997 hiring booklet that no one kept on purpose, which means someone kind kept it anyway. The someone finds it, the someone scans, the someone sends. Faces populate a screen like a chorus about to sing the wrong song. The lieutenant hears the quiet snap of a net that might be strong enough to hold at least one answer for a family who doesn't know yet that questions are multiplying. He drives to the dry lake one more time, not to ask permission, to make room. He stands at the place where the buckle once lay and says into the wide air that after doesn't mean finished, it means steady. He says he is trying, even now, to learn retirement as a word that contains usefulness. He says he will teach the rookies how to listen to a humming room and the scratch of a number in stud wood in the shape of a bead and the gravity inside a home video on a rainy screen. The wind answers with the sound of sand editing its own edges. He smiles, because that is exactly right. Back in town, the porch lamps come on, some by habit, some by sensor, some by hands that have learned timing like a craft. The brother bikes past the motel and sees the new letters and feels the old numbers floating beneath paint like a palimpsest and doesn't flinch. The mother folds dish towels and watches a shadow cross the lamplight and decides not to assign meaning. Sometimes a shadow is just an evening learning its own body. The DJ cues a song that begins with a heartbeat and doesn't resolve for 2 minutes and adds a weather report that says dry for a while. And the town nods as if that were news. The evidence room hum holds, indifferent and faithful, and the lieutenant writes a name on a sticky note and places it under the still frame from the party, then changes his mind and throws the note away because guesses are for kitchens, not labs. He locks up, steps into the alley where the light has a new tone, and walks toward a horizon without conditions, carrying nothing in his hands and everything in his pockets that a day like this demands. A pen that writes in rain, a folded map, a flyer smoothed flat so many times the fibers remember his fingertips, and a promise that doesn't need microphones to be true.